Good shoulder from Marchment, but the Blues hold it in. Broberg, slapper, through on Saar! Kapanen on the backhand, spun it and slid it in along the goal line. 3-1, St. Louis.
It's like I was saying all day yesterday. You put Kapanen in the lineup, you expect immediate results. That's what it sounded like last night right here in your home of the Blues 101 ESPN as the Blues get a much-needed preseason victory, if such a thing exists. 4-3 in overtime last night at home against the Dallas Stars with Alex and T-Bone on BK. We are broadcasting live at the EMB Granite Studios out at the Centene Community Ice Center where the Blues are hosting practice, training camp, morning skate, whatever you want to call it today.
Whatever you want.
As we finish up the preseason action. Alex, the story of the night last night was, I can't believe that I'm saying this, but it's true. Kasperi Kapanen was awesome in his return to action, and the Blues made I would call it unpopular decision to take Zach Bolduc out of the lineup, put Kasperi Kapanen back into the lineup, and the early results were positive. What did you see from Kapanen last night? What do you think it means for the Blues as we leave preseason action?
Kapanen was the best player on the ice last night, and what it means,
I believe you, but wow.
Dude, it's wild to say that, but he was the best player on the ice last night. They had a goal taken away from Ryan Suter that scored, and it was goaltender interference, which wasn't goalie interference. So,
good.
Surprise hockey fans. Refs still don't know what goalie interference is. But regardless, Kapanen picked up an assist on that one, and he was the primary assist, the pass to Ryan Suter. So he could have ended that game with 3 points if that goal would have stayed, and it would have been a +3 for this guy with 3 shots on goal. He was the best player on the ice. That line with Braden Shen and Matthew Joseph, I think they created 9 scoring chances, and 5 of them were high-danger scoring chances. Kapanen solidified his spot not only on the opening night roster last night, but in the starting lineup on Tuesday against the Seattle Kraken. Because now Kapanen has played 4 preseason games. He's picked up a total of 2 goals and 1 assist. And on top of that, he has 10 shots on goal. Now I scroll down a little bit and I look at Zach Bolduc, who he's had a good camp, but he's played in 3 preseason games without a point, and he's got 10 shots on goal. Kapanen is getting production. Bolduc hadn't been getting production, playing in a top 6 role. Guys, Kapanen did that last night with Braden Shen and Matthew Joseph. So he's got the speed. He's got the ability to forecheck and separate man from puck. And it just seemed to work with Braden Shen and Matthew Joseph. It's a preseason game. I understand that. Dallas had a decent-looking lineup, but it's not similar to what their opening night lineup looks like. But if that's how Kapanen's going to play, it's going to be tough for somebody to kick him out of the lineup. The real question is going to be, can you make it consistent? Kapanen's been consistent for 4 preseason games, but can you stay consistent in the regular season?
And the answer is no. Like, we know this, and that's okay. But we can be honest. The Kasperi Kapanen decision, at least to me, Alex, is more about Zach Bolduc than it is Kasperi Kapanen. I know that there are some that are going to sell us on the notion that Kapanen can be this 20-goal scorer again. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. I think Kasperi Kapanen probably won't have a spot in the lineup after Brandon Saad gets back. I think that's the most likely scenario. As Saad returns, Kapanen comes out of the lineup, and he becomes your 13th or 14th forward at that point in time. Again, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with having a guy making $1 million who knows his role, that can come in and out of the lineup on any given time, can play up or down in the lineup when necessary, and he's going to be there for you. And you can play the roster math game. You don't have to worry about the waivers with somebody like a Zach Bolduc. But to me, the decision to put Kapanen back into the lineup tells you more about where they believe that Zach Bolduc is at this point in his career than it does about Kapanen. I'm not expecting upside. I think if you get 10 goals out of Kasperi Kapanen this year, that would be a overwhelming success, given what my current expectations are for him. To me, this is all about Bolduc needs more time. He needs more seasoning down in the AHL, just as Dvorsky needed more seasoning down in the AHL. And a couple of years ago, they believed Jake Neighbors needed more seasoning down in the AHL. That's fine. Get them the time that they need. This year is not about exposing them at the NHL level. It's about when they're ready, coming and getting them the reps that they need at the NHL level. But for now, you've got a guy that's a placeholder in Kapanen, and that's okay. But I don't need to be sold that he's anything that he's not.
You may be right, and I'm not going to try and sell you a bag of goods because it sounds like you're not interested in my Girl Scout cookies that I'm here to offer you, BK. But I will say this. He did something that other guys didn't in training camp. Well, yes, but he earned a spot. Now, Bolduc had the opportunity to come in here, and they were giving him those chances, and he never took it. Kapanen was taking those opportunities, playing on a third and fourth line role. Here's the other thing of why I'm not sold on him having this rejuvenation and becoming a 20-goal scorer, but I am optimistic of like, hey, man, if this guy can figure something out, maybe he could contribute in a different way, because this guy was not brought back immediately by the Blues. Everyone around the NHL had the opportunity to sign him to a contract, and he came back to the Blues on a one-year, $1 million deal. The other options for him, and I don't know what the negotiations were probably to go to the American Hockey League. And if you're Kapanen, this might be the end of the road for your career in the NHL. If this doesn't work, I don't know how many other teams are taking a chance on you. You were claimed off of waivers, nobody signed you as a free agent, and you went back to the same team basically on a league minimum deal. If you take that and run with it, you can make a role for yourself. He scored 20 goals in the past. He was playing with some really good players, whether it was Malkin or Matthews or, I can't believe I'm about to say these words, Nazem Kadri. Yeah. But he was playing with good players, and he scored. Last year, he was playing with Kevin Hayes. Sorry, no disrespect to Kevin Hayes, which, by the way, scored an empty net goal last night. Watch out, ladies and gentlemen. Cool.
Only way he can.
Probably true. If he plays with a Shen and a Joseph, does that give him chemistry to take his game to the next level? I find myself more on the side of BK, but I will be optimistic of the fact that, look, he earned the right to play in a top-9 role compared to guys like Bolduc that didn't steal the shot, or even other players like a Nathan Walker or potentially like an Alexei Toropchenko.
Okay, let me ask the question, though. Do we think he's in the lineup after Brandon Saad gets back?
No.
It's hard to say no because I don't know what the other players. Texier could come out.
I would be shocked.
I mean, Texier could come out. Walker could come out. It really depends on how these other guys.
But if Walker comes out, somebody's going down to the fourth line. And my guess
which would be Texier.
Okay.
But that's where it comes down to consistency, though. If Kapanen doesn't.
If they think Texier, and I apologize for stepping in here. If they think Texier's biggest deficiency is his defense, you think they're going to put that on the fourth line? Because that, to me, feels like the opposite of what I would want as my fourth liner.
But if Texier's not scoring or contributing to offense on a top 6 role, that's where Brandon Saad could play.
Exactly, and I'm bumping Texier down to that third line role where Kapanen is right now.
Unless Kapanen's creating offense with Shen and Joseph, and that's where it comes. That's where it comes to consistency. And I'm with you, BK, because I don't know. Preseason.
I just think we're making a lot over one preseason game. Because it's not like this was his first preseason game.
No, but
before yesterday, we were all saying.
But he scored in the first preseason game too for this team. He was playing with Zach Dean and Matthew Joseph.
I just think we're making a lot out of preseason action. And when we've seen now how many games from Kasperi Kapanen in a Blues uniform, like this is not a new guy to the roster. This is not Dylan Holloway who's coming in from another roster, a young guy who's getting his first opportunity at the NHL level.
But it's a new lease on life, BK.
Yeah, I generally speaking think we have a pretty good idea of what 28, 29-year-old players are going to do at the NHL level when they've played as many games as Kasperi Kapanen has.
Totally agree. It comes down to consistency. Can you perform?
He's played 460 NHL games, and he has not been consistent.
That's a small number compared to Suter, for example.
Yeah, you're right. There's 1,000 more games under Ryan Suter's belt.
See?
It all comes down to consistency, though.
Like, played 100 games for the Blues.
Yeah. And in the first season, he was consistent. And I know it was 23 games and you were out of the playoffs.
And the Blues were playing pond hockey. You know who else was consistent at that point in time?
Yeah, Jakub Vrana. Hey, he got a contract from the Capitals. I'm just saying, if he plays the way he did in preseason on Tuesday against the Seattle Kraken, he doesn't come out of the lineup. But you have to be aware that he was fighting for a job. Yeah. If he earned the job, what's the motivation to stay that consistent?
I think the overwhelming likelihood is he's going to get 3 games, 4 games, however long Saad's out while he's with his family, and then he's out of the lineup. I think we're seeing like the Logan Brown preseason 2.0, but it's not a center. And
I'm not as excited about this one though as Logan Brown.
Well, yeah,
Logan Brown was.
I think it's because you learned. I think you learned the Logan Brown one was way off.
No, I think it's different. I think it's a different situation. I think that the Logan Brown one, while he went way over the top,
way over the top.
At least that's a young guy that hadn't had legitimate opportunities already at the NHL level. We know who Kasperi Kapanen is. This is like me falling for a Major League Baseball player that's already been with the Cardinals for 5 seasons, and then year 6, this is the time when it's really going to come around for, and sometimes it does.
Lars Nootbaar.
I was thinking Vader.
I mean, I'm talking about a guy that's like way worse than those two players because Kapanen is not at the same level as those two. But
man, you and Kasperi Kapanen.
Kapanen's fine, but he's a 13th forward at the NHL level. Corey Dickerson was way better.
John Nagowski.
No, I'm going to push back on the Dickerson was way better.
Dude, Dickerson was an all-star at the big league level.
Kapanen scored 20 goals at the NHL level.
Let's also remember Major League Baseball says, like, hey, everybody has to have somebody. It's like a participation trophy.
Corey Dickerson was 40% above league average for a season. He had a 900 OPS in 2019. That's a hell of a lot better than anything.
Look, Kyle Tucker, calm down over there.
One off.
Somebody said Jake Woodford. That's a perfect comparison. This is like us falling for Jake Woodford. Like, Jake Woodford ain't going to be a legit mid-rotation starter at the big league level, and that's okay.
And again, we've got the track record. All I'm saying is, does he find the proper chemistry with the right lines early on? Because if you do, you're not going to come out of the lineup. Now, maybe he's not a 20-goal scorer, but if you play a 200-foot game and you can be a reliable line like they were last night, they were good defensively just as much as they were offensively. And remember that Stanley Cup run, the line of Sundqvist, Barbashev, and Steen, although they did create a lot of offense in the playoffs, Berube loved that line because it set the other lines up for success. They'd get zone time, they'd wear the other team down, get off the bench, and then the other line would come on and score. Last night, they did that twice. Suter goal got brought back, but previous to that, of course, they scored the goal. So it really just comes down to consistency with Kapanen, and to your point, he hasn't been consistent in the NHL. Do I believe a 30-year-old is about to re-find the fountain of youth? Absolutely not. But at least in preseason, he's looked the part.
I guess I should put it this way. I'm not telling you that Kapanen can't stay in the lineup. I'm not telling you that Kapanen can't be a guy that's in your top 9. Fine. Could he be in there over Texier? Sure. I wouldn't do that because I think there's more untapped potential with Texier, and I'd like to find out, and that's what the season should be all about for the Blues. But what I'm saying is, like, I think there has become because Bolduc is the spot that he took, it's almost as if the hope and expectations for Bolduc have now been placed upon Kapanen, and it's not the same situation. It's the same roster spot, but it's two very different players that should go into the season with very different expectations. My expectation for Kapanen is, can you play a decent 3 games while Brandon Saad is out? And when Brandon Saad gets back, you're going to be a good soldier. You're going to go up to the press box and sit in the press box until until something else changes for the lineup. That's my current expectations for Kapanen. If he changes those, great, but that's what he earned last night. He earned last night the opportunity to get those first 3 games.
Totally.
And that's it. Nothing more, nothing less.
Yep.
Good for Kapanen. He needed it. This was his opportunity. He took advantage of it. So credit to him for doing so, but I really don't want to get out over my skis on what it means for him or for the team in the bigger picture.
Look, man, you know me. I love my bold predictions. I did not put any labels on Kasperi Kapanen other than he earned the right to start the season on that 3rd line.
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Grant
goals.
France is back in the studio for us today, holding things down. We are broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. I want to hear from you guys. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. YouTube chat off and running today. YouTube.com/101ESPN STL. That's where the graveyard chat is taking place today. Coming up next, I'm guessing you guys have some thoughts. The Cardinals did what you've all been asking for. They fired a coach. We'll tell you who, what it means for him next here on 101 ESPN. was time. We all knew it. The Cardinals knew it. They had to make a change. There was some talk at the end of the Cardinals season that they would retain all of their coaches. That is no longer the case. According to Katie Wu, our Cardinals insider for The Athletic, Turner Ward is officially gone as the Cardinals hitting coach.
Whoa. You calm down, man.
It was time. It was time. I'm not taking any pleasure of Turner Ward being gone for the Cardinals after this season when they had a collective 704 OPS. Bam, bam. They hit the fourth fewest home runs in Major League Baseball this season. I don't know if Turner Ward was the problem with the offense. In fact, I would rank him like probably fifth among their problems this year offensively. But he was part of the problem. He wasn't part of the solution, more importantly. And I think we learned that this year. It took way too long for their young players and their veterans to get out of their slumps. Nolan Arenado never was able to figure out how to regain his power. And maybe he never will, but I would like to find somebody else that can potentially give me that opportunity. Paul Goldschmidt, never able to get out of his funk offensively this season. Finished the year below league average as an offensive contributor. Turner Ward was supposed to be his hand-picked guy. They were super tight in the past. They remain close to this day. They trust one another. That's a big part of the job as a hitting coach. It just didn't work. You look at the young players. Jordan Walker, Nolan Gorman took major steps back offensively. The beginning of the year, it was a sluggish start for both Brendan Donovan and Lars Nootbaar. Nootbaar never figured out his ground ball problem this year. It's the biggest thing that is taking him from being a like 20 to 30% above league average offensive contributor to a 10 to 15% above league average offensive contributor. I don't think all of that is on Turner Ward. I don't believe that. I do think it is fair to say at this point you have had your opportunity. It did not work, and now we've got to find somebody else that can take on this role. Alex, what comes next is finding out who they're going to hire for that role. Could be Brandon Allen. It sounds like basically the entire rest of the coaching staff is going to be back. My expectation is they'll probably add to it, similar to what they did last year as well. Brandon Allen is their assistant hitting coach. He's expected back. It's possible he takes on the full hitting coach responsibilities. I don't know. What will you be looking for in who they hire as the next hitting coach for the team? What will that tell you, Alex, about the direction this organization is heading?
I believe the hire is going to tell you youth movement or an established hitting coach. And what I mean by that is Turner Ward was a guy that had a very old school mentality, and you brought him in, what was that, 2022, where it felt like, hey, we've got a roster that can compete. We need to compete. You bring him in because of the Arenados, the Goldschmidts, and you add more veteran hitters to that lineup while trying to develop those younger players. The Cardinals have made it pretty clear that there is going to be a youth movement at the major league level, so that next hitting coach should be somebody who connects and has success in terms of developing younger hitters, because that's the way that the Cardinals are going to be going. I understand that you'll want somebody who's got a resume in Major League Baseball, kind of like what Turner Ward did before the Cardinals, where, hey, he was a hitting coach with the Padres, a hitting coach with the Yankees, and now he's with the Cardinals to bring that expertise over. I don't think that's the way to go for this team. It feels the Cardinals need to go a route of, hey, this is a guy who understands how to develop younger hitters, Jordan Walkers, Ivan Herreras, these types of guys, Alec Burleson, Mason Wynn, Nolan Gorman. That's got to be the hitting coach, because if your new core is in place that they're so excited about, that's trending in the other direction, you got to get a hitting coach that's going to be moving along with them rather than a guy who's up here while everyone else is down here.
Yeah, I think when you look at what they need to do with the next hitting coach, I think it's got to be someone that's tailored to the young guys. I mean, they're going to go through a youth movement. I don't think you need to necessarily, though it will be part of his job, necessarily say, we got to go find a guy that's going to connect with Nolan Arenado and fix Arenado's swing. We got to figure out what went wrong and if he can fix his power. It's going to be a part of his job, but the bigger issue is they've got to figure out who's going to work with these young guys. Who's going to be the guy that can come in, quote-unquote, bond with them and figure out what's wrong with their swing, figure out what they need. I don't know what every one of those young guys needs. My assumption is they're probably a little bit more analytically inclined than some of the older veteran players were a year ago, like a Matt Carpenter and some of those guys. But I think that's what you're looking for. You're looking for someone that connects with this youth movement, and hopefully he can figure out and see if they can close in on some of these slumps, slower, make these slumps not as long, like Jordan Walker, where it was really for almost 2 months. Even when he went down to AAA, he struggled right at the very beginning. Nolan Gorman, basically the entire season was a slump for Nolan Gorman. He had never had that like peak month that we talk about, where he's 1 month he's hot, 1 month he's cold. They never really got the maximum of that 1 month where he's hot. So that's what they need to be looking for, in my opinion.
I will be fascinated to see if you have a connection to the Tampa Bay Rays organization with this hire. That'll be something that I'm looking for. Do you see somebody that is coming from Chaim Bloom's past that is implemented at the major league level to effectively take on the role that previously was held by Jeff Albert?
Wouldn't that be Ollie's decision, though?
Could be. Maybe not.
Doesn't it seem odd to hire a hitting coach when the manager is in flux beyond this season?
Not really. No, I think this happens across Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like, was Jeff Albert a Ollie/Mike Shildt? Like, was that a them decision? I don't know. I think a lot of that was about, hey, this is the guy that Mo wants in that spot.
Right.
And he's going to put his hitting philosophy into the minor league system because he felt like they were falling behind in that regard. Well, they are continuing to fall behind, and Chaim Bloom's job is to make sure that they push them into the future, right?
Yeah.
So if he has a tie to somebody, and I'm guessing it wouldn't be like without any say from Ollie Marmol. It would probably be hey, Ollie, can you meet with this guy? I think he would be a really good fit. I don't know if you have any history, if you guys have crossed paths at any point in the minor leagues or whatever, but I think he'd be really good. Why don't you give him a call, spend an hour together, grab some coffee, and see if your hitting philosophies would align? And if they do, I think this is a really good direction for us to go. I could see something like that. I don't know. This is pure speculation by me, but I think it would be an intriguing situation for the Cardinals if that's the direction that they decided to go.
And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if Chaim Bloom has his hands on this hire. And what I mean is essentially what you just said. Kind of says, hey, Ollie, just meet with this guy.
Yeah.
Because when you think about Ollie Marmol, he's always been in the Cardinals organization.
Exactly.
He's come up through the minor leagues. He's basically kind of took over the entire staff that Mike Shildt had. I don't know how far his connections go. At least with Chaim Bloom, I can point to him and go, hey, he's been in 3 different organizations. And he's been to Tampa Bay where they were more analytically inclined. He's been to Boston where they were a big spending payroll team, and they also worked with, like, Alex Cora. Like, he's got better connections is the right word. He's got more connections, I would think, since he's been with 3 different organizations at this
Think
point.
about the other organizations that have ties to the Rays, right? You have other organizations that then implemented the quote-unquote Rays way. So you look at the Giants. Do they have anybody within their minor league organization that you find to be a great teacher for hitting philosophy? I don't know. Maybe. The Dodgers. Do they have anybody that is not currently at their big league level that you would pinpoint and say, hey, I think that guy's ready to take the jump from where they were in the minor leagues to being a big league hitting instructor? Again, I don't know who that person is. I'm not going out scouring the minor leagues to see who the best hitting coaches are. That is Chaim Bloom's job. That's what he's here to do. So if he has a connection with somebody that he knows within the minor leagues or the major leagues elsewhere that he thinks would be a good fit here, go out and make that move, and then tell Ollie about it. Make sure that they're in line. To your point, Alex, I think what you were basically saying is, can Chaim Bloom make that unilateral decision? Totally fair. No, you can't do that. But if you have the idea, you send it to Ollie. Ollie signs off on it. Now you've got a potentially really good fit there. We have a lot of people on the text line that are saying something about, what about Matt Holliday? What about Ryan Ludwig? What about Albert Pujols? Like all of the former Cardinals that we'll hear about, right? I'm sure at some point we'll hear about Alan Craig. We'll probably hear, hey, John Jay was let out of his contracts with the Marlins. He's somebody that, sure. There's a lot of ties to the Cardinals organization that you could go find. Personally, and this is not a prerequisite, but for me, I would like to see them go outside of the organization for this hire. I think this is a team that could really use some outside influence. I think that's part of what makes the Chaim Bloom hire intriguing to me. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I find it intriguing because at least it's new life put into this organization. I think they could use that on the hitting side. I would like to see a fresh perspective as the new hitting coach of the Cardinals within this organization. So I think that filters down through the minor league level. Whatever you're going to do at the major league level, it should be in line with what you're doing in your minor league system. And that's why I think Chaim Bloom should have some say in this.
And I was going to say, I hope if they are going to make this hire, I mean, you mentioned adding to the coaching staff. I hope they hire. Now, they've got to be in line, but I hope if they're going to hire these guys, it's not going to be like what Jeff Albert did, which is, hey, you're overseeing the major league hitting staff, and you've got to oversee the entire minor league system as well. It's kind of like what Dusty Blake's doing right now. I think you can't maximize your coach if you're going to have him spread that thin. I think they need to make 2 hires probably. They need to hire a hitting coach for the big league level, and they need to hire somebody that's going to oversee the minor leagues, but is also in line with that hitting coach. Honestly, probably the hitting coach hires that guy that they bring in. That way you're not spreading your coaching staff too thin.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to go about it. I'm sure they've got ideas as to the direction that they're going to go with this. I think it's going to tell us a lot about where the organization is heading. Yeah. I think this hire should be indicative of what comes next. Yeah. It's probably going to be Brandon Allen. They'll just promote him, and then they'll promote somebody from inside of the organization to be
I'll bring
the
up like the
assistant.
AAA hitting coach.
And then the hire that will really tell us something is the one that you just mentioned, which is the minor league hitting instructor.
Like when they don't do it?
Well, I think they'll do something like that. They had mentioned previously at the press conference that they've got a bunch of new leadership positions that they're going to put in place. They're going to have the farm director, but then they're going to have guys that are like lieutenants below him. I think they know we have way too few people in charge of our minor league system, and that's something that they're going to start investing in. It's about time. It's way past time, frankly. But we'll see what comes from that. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, we'll get into that coming up at 11:45. But next, I want to get the Red Sox perspective on Chaim Bloom. Because we heard yesterday all the positives that could come from Chaim Bloom as the next president of baseball operations here. We got the Rays perspective. Things didn't go quite as well for him in his time with Boston. Does it still feel that way? Or they've got one of the top farm systems in baseball. Are they starting to reap the rewards now of what Chaim was able to put in place? We'll talk to a Boston insider about that next here on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last home game for the Blues in the preseason last night. They picked up a win over the Dallas Stars as Jordan Kyrou got the winner in overtime, 4-3 over Dallas. The Blues now 2-4 on this preseason. One last preseason game to go. That'll be tomorrow in Milwaukee as the Blues take on the Chicago Blackhawks before they get underway in the regular season on Tuesday in Seattle. And a little bit of Cardinals news to pass along as they announced this morning they will be parting ways with hitting coach Turner Ward. Tonight on 101 ESPN, you can catch some college football action as we will have number 25 ranked UNLV, who's 4-0 on the season, going up against Syracuse. That pregame will start here on 101 ESPN at 7:30. I'm Grant Francis. The Sports Center update's been driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alex, yesterday we got the perspective of somebody that covered Chaim Bloom's tenure in Tampa Bay, what we can expect from him in his time here in St. Louis. Most of it was skewing a little positive, right? He did a very good job in Tampa Bay. We've seen the quote-unquote Rays way infiltrate Major League Baseball and other organizations, some with success, others with failures. His time with Boston was littered with hits and misses. Right now, the farm system looks pretty good, but in his time there was not a lot of success at the big league level. We now go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to get the Boston perspective on Chaim Bloom's tenure with the Red Sox. John Tomase is joining us here on 101 ESPN. He covers the Red Sox for NBC Sports in Boston. John, we appreciate the time, man. Let's start with the obvious, kind of 10,000-foot view. How would you look back at the Chaim Bloom era with the Boston Red Sox?
I mean, you said it right off the top, more hits than misses. I think that's a fair way to evaluate it. As it stands now, it's kind of a failure, but ultimately that's going to be decided, I suppose, by the prospects that we talked about that you mentioned off the top. You know, they have three guys in MLB Pipeline's top 10. That reflects well on him. But there were enough misses in Boston that I think, as things stand now, it's a fail.
So I know a lot of people, John, the biggest miss is, of course, trading away Mookie Betts and really not getting much in return. It's hard to win that trade no matter what. But what are some of the other misses that you view Chaim Bloom's tenure as?
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame him for Mookie. That was a management thing. They fired Dave Dombrowski partly because he didn't want to trade Mookie Betts. So whoever came in, that was going to be the first order of business. But I think there was something instructive about how he pulled off that trade, which was to wait and wait and wait. And I think if there's one major criticism of his Boston tenure, it was that indecisiveness, the way that he would sort of suffer from analysis paralysis, I think. You know, you have a lot of guys in that analytics department. He built that out. There are a lot of voices there. And the problem is, I think the more voices you hear, the easier it is to get to know on everything. And you go back to his Red Sox tenure, I think that the two moments that cost him really were the trade deadlines in 2022 and 2023. The first one, the Red Sox had a bad year. It was clear they weren't going anywhere. They had a bunch of pending free agents, and you thought, okay, now is the time to sell. Ownership was clearly going to be on board with that. And it started strong. He traded Christian Vasquez to the Astros. He got Wilyer Abreu. That turned out to be a great deal for the Red Sox. Abreu could win a Gold Glove this year. He's one of their better young players. Good trade. The problem is he didn't do anything else. He kept Bogarts. He kept Nathan Eovaldi, kept J.D. Martinez. They snuck over the luxury tax, which was inexcusable, and they had nothing to show for it. All those guys ended up leaving. Then you go to 23, they really did nothing, and that was a team that was a game out of the playoffs going into the All-Star break or into the trade deadline, and the clubhouse just lost the clubhouse right after that when there was really no activity. Ownership wanted them to pick a lane, do something, They didn't. And so it really, to me, comes back to just a lack of decisiveness. One thing you're going to get with Chaim Bloom, he's not going to trade away the wrong prospects because he tends not to trade any prospects. And that became a problem with the Red Sox. So on the good side of that, if you're Boston, Jarren Duran is still here. He was an all-star this year, all-star game MVP. A different GM, chief baseball officer, might have traded him. Bloom didn't. But the problem is he just wasn't really willing to take the kind of big swings that a market like Boston demanded.
Do you think he learned from that? Or is this a scenario where I guess it's hard to know, right? We'll find out together. But do you think that Chaim Bloom learned from his failures with Boston?
1,000%. I mean, this is somebody, he's not arrogant. He's brilliant, but he's not arrogant. And I think every step of the way in his Red Sox tenure, remember, this was his first crack at running things. There was a perception that, he was, maybe sort of co-GM in Tampa. Neander ran the show in Tampa, and he was an assistant. And coming to Boston, he became the lead guy. I think he learned stuff every day. You learn things about, you assume if you're a good person that everyone has your back in your organization. And I mean, you guys know that's not how things work. There's a lot of backbiting. There's a lot of backstabbing. I think he didn't really catch on to that, how unhappy and how maybe there were some people undermining him within his own organization. I think he'll be much more eyes wide open going in with the Cardinals. I think there were some respect issues. I mean, we talked about the 23 deadline. After there was relative inaction, he defended it by saying, well, we're underdogs because their playoff odds were low. And nobody in Boston, one of the most storied franchises in baseball with unlimited resources, wants to hear that you're underdogs. It sat so poorly in his clubhouse that his manager, Alex Cora, showed up in Yankee Stadium a day or two later, very conspicuously wearing the cartoon character Underdog, from the 60s. He had an Underdog T-shirt on. And I was just trying, when you saw it, we all knew what that was a reference to. And all I could think was Alex Cora would not have done that if Dave Dombrowski were still running the show. So I think, Chaim learned some things that way. And I will say this, everyone in Boston is certainly fascinated to see how he does in St. Louis. But I would say people are rooting for him as well because he's a genuinely decent guy. And you guys asked the right question. Will he learn from his Boston experience? I think he will.
As a follow-up to that, John, because John Mozeliak is somebody who I think gets, for me personally, and there's definitely differing perspectives on this, as I would imagine there are differing perspectives on Chaim Bloom's tenure in Boston. John Mozeliak does some things really well. One thing that has been a problem for him in the last few years is messaging. There's just not been a great PR campaign by the Cardinals to sell things to the fan base. Out of curiosity, and that is one example of this, how is Chaim Bloom in terms of the messaging to the fans through the media?
A little hit or miss, a little, I would say, unpolished or maybe naive in a way. He went to the team's fan fest. Well, let me back up. He's available. Chaim Bloom will answer for the decisions that he makes. He will be accountable to the fans. You don't have to worry about him. We're dealing now with an owner, John Henry, who hasn't really spoken to local media in 5 years. Chaim Bloom is not that. He will be available and accountable, so that part is good. He needs more polish, certainly publicly. He went to the Red Sox fan festival thing that they have over the winter, which is generally just a feel-good, backslappy sort of thing. And he practically got booed off the stage. I mean, the booing was intense, and I think he was taken aback by that. And part of it was the message. It was a little too we're going to be great. This farm system is going to be great. And fans were so angry at losing Xander Bogaerts and losing Mookie Betts and watching the core of this historically great team from 2018, won 108 games in the World Series, watch that all get taken apart. They didn't want to hear how great the farm system was going to be because they could see what was staring at them in front of them, which was a mediocre team, and that's ultimately what the Red Sox were. So I think he'll probably need to be a little more careful, I guess, in how he portrays things, especially if they're not going well. Fans see right through it if you try to sell them something that they can see isn't true.
John, on that farm system, the whole press conference with Chaim Bloom and the Cardinals earlier this week was talking about, fixing the minor league system. The Cardinals had gotten away from what made them good, and Chaim Bloom was supposed to come in and kind of reinvent the wheel, so to speak, with the minor league system for the Cardinals. It sounds like he had a lot of success doing that with the Boston Red Sox. Am I correct?
100%. And if you want to say what are the good parts of Chaim Bloom's tenure, that's where you start. It's kind of where you start and finish. The farm system under Dave Dombrowski had slipped because he had traded away a lot of guys to get proven big leaguers, Craig Kimbrell and other guys who helped the Red Sox win a World Series, so no complaints there. The system needed to be reinvigorated. It has. I mentioned there's no team in baseball that has 3 of the top 30 prospects in MLB's most recent rankings except the Red Sox, and their 3 are in the top 10. All of those guys, Roman Anthony, number 1 prospect in baseball, according to Baseball America. That's a Chaim Bloom draft pick. Christian Campbell, the consensus minor league player of the year by virtually pretty much everybody. He's a Chaim Bloom guy. And so you look at the Red Sox, they are stacked with position player prospects. Interestingly enough, they did not really do anything to address pitching side of things. If you look at their drafts, I'm trying to remember, they didn't take a picture in the top 50 or 100 picks during his tenure. I can't remember the exact number, but it was all position guys. However, that said, they are loaded with position prospects, and that is something to feel good about. And there are a lot of people within baseball, especially people who worked with Chaim in Tampa and knew him better, who said if the Red Sox had just been patient and given him 1 more year, you would have really seen the fruits of what he was trying to build. I guess we'll never know, but we'll see. I feel like the Cardinals are a more patient organization, and if he undertakes what seems to be, overhaul of the farm system that's working, he'll be given a chance to see it through.
Just from our conversation, we're talking with John Tomase joining us here on 101 ESPN. He's the Red Sox insider for NBC Sports in Boston. From our conversation, it feels like the timing of the hire is also better for where he was hired with the Cardinals versus when he was hired with Boston. Because Cardinals fans, you mentioned him getting booed off stage at what is effectively their winter warm-up, is what we call it here in Boston, in St. Louis. I think Cardinals fans are fine with the idea of taking a step back to then take a step forward right now because of what the last few seasons have been like. And so the timing makes a little bit more sense with what he's trying to accomplish here. I am curious, John, as you look down into the minor league system and some of the things beyond just like selecting the right players in the draft, as you look organizationally, coaching that was put in place in the minor league system, technology that's used in the minor league system, scouting and resources that are available internationally for the team, how much, if at all, did that change under Chaim Bloom's tenure compared to what you had seen previously with the Red Sox?
Oh, it's night and day. I mean, he completely modernized the front office. They had sort of a lag between the Theo Epstein into Ben Cherington years where they were ahead of the curve. By the time Dave Dombrowski left, behind the scenes, they were definitely behind the curve. They didn't have as big of an analytics department. Their player development whole system had become kind of stale. Technology was not really integrated as it should have been and as the more cutting-edge organizations like Tampa and some others had done. He modernized all of that. And, in one sense, you have to be kind of deep in the weeds to care about it because a lot of fans just say, well, give me a good team on the field in the major leagues. But it sounds like, you're talking about Cardinals fans maybe being a little bit more in tune with that. And in that sense, I think they will be pleasantly surprised. That's something that Chaim made a priority in Boston, building out systems and all that kind of stuff, where sometimes you're like, are we talking about baseball or NASA? I don't know what we're talking about here, but there's certainly a lot of effort and attention was paid to that.
All right, John, we'll get you out of here on this. And I know the predictions are made to be broken. Who knows how this is going to go for Chaim Bloom in St. Louis. But if you had to guess, given your experience with him in Boston, given what you know about him as an executive, do you think this is going to work for the Cardinals with Chaim Bloom as their president of baseball operations?
If your goal is to build a team from within, build a farm system, sort of get back to that Cardinal way and not have a quick fix, the answer is yes. If you want to see something more immediate, he's not the guy I would hire if you're trying to, say, we want to turn this thing around in 2 years. If you're willing to be patient, I do think Cardinals fans will be rewarded on the other end. Just understand that there could be some lean years in between.
John Tomase covers the Red Sox for NBC Sports. Boston was there to watch what the pluses and the minuses were for Chaim Bloom's tenure in Boston with the Red Sox. John, thanks so much for the time, man. Really appreciate it. Felt like this gave us a lot of insight into what we can expect with Chaim Bloom as the Cardinals president of baseball operations.
You got it.
Thanks, John Tomase, joining us here on 101 ESPN. Sincerely appreciate his time. I thought that was excellent.
I did too.
Really interesting stuff. And after talking with him,
I'll be curious.
I think what Cardinals fans want is to set themselves up for sustained success again and to get back to what they know is quote-unquote Cardinals baseball. And again, just from talking with John and talking yesterday with our Rays insider that we talked to, and frankly, talking to people around the Cardinals and reading a lot about Chaim Bloom and seeing a lot of the stuff about it, I think he's going to do that. If you're expecting what we've been talking about, which is like, hey, take your minor league system, take the surplus value and trade it for a, Vlad Guerrero Jr., I don't get the sense that that's going to be the Chaim Bloom model. But if you want to get back to having a good minor league system and winning the way that the Cardinals have in the past, I think Bloom's going to be able to do that. And so I think he is a modern version of what Mo once was.
I came out of that interview the exact same thought process. I actually walked away from this a little bit more optimistic about this Cardinals than previously because of Chaim Bloom. First of all, he said he's not arrogant, which I think a lot of Cardinals fans are going to enjoy. But hearing him talk about how he reshaped the minor league system, and I think some of the negatives with Chaim is in his talks, John, of how meticulous Chaim is with decisions and how he takes too long to make decisions, which we've seen that with the Cardinals, how he won't trade prospects. That's a little infuriating. But what you said was my thought process. Look at how excited Blues fans are of like what the Blues are building for sustainability, their minor league system. They've got young players, and you expect that when this team's ready to compete, it's going to be an open window for a long time. That's what Cardinals fans want. What John said there at the end, they don't want a 2-year fix, and then all of a sudden you're good for a couple of years, and then we're right back into square one. They want to get to that point and then stay where they were, just like it was in the early 2000s all the way up until things really fell apart for the Cardinals. They want that again. It sure sounds like, is it going to be a couple of bleak years? Absolutely. But it sure sounds like that if you wanted a guy who could come in, fix your minor league problem, but also go out there and identify really good prospects. You heard him mention in the trade of Christian Vasquez. Like, that's a catcher that was good, but it's not like he was amazing. And they got a prospect that's going to get a gold glove for the Boston Red Sox. So he's able to identify these guys, and you set it up for long-term success. I actually walked away from that interview feeling like the Cardinals might be in a better position than what they originally were. I think my frustration is more, you should be doing this now, and we shouldn't be waiting one more year for it.
Can I give you my tinfoil on that? I think part of that might be him saying, I'm not making these trades again.
I don't want to do it
I'm
now.
not doing the same thing that I did last time, where my first move to, endear myself to the fan base is trading future Hall of Famers. I traded Mookie Betts, and I was never able to recover from that. There's no way that any Boston fan was ever going to enjoy what Chaim Bloom was going to do, no matter what the successes were, because he is always tied to the stench of trading away Mookie Betts. Here in St. Louis, I don't think it's to the same degree. I think a lot of Cardinals fans are more than happy to see some of their highly paid veterans go. But, trading Ryan Helsley will not be a popular move. And that's probably something they need to do this offseason. Trading Nolan Arenado, there will be some fans that point to that and say, really? We got to go that low? And so if they end up doing that, I don't know that they will for sure or not, but if they end up doing that this offseason, I could see why the organization and Chaim Bloom would say, I don't want to be the one in charge of that. Go ahead and put Mo in charge of making those moves this offseason, and then I'll fix the minor league system this year, spend my time with that, and then we can fix the big league club as we continue along here.
Yeah, I think that's the smart decision to do, because look at what happens when you see new ownership groups come in. New ownership groups, what do? They have the previous ownership group tear it down to the studs for them. Right. So it's not their first move. And I wondered if that was part of the thinking when we had that press conference and the press conference after the press conference.
That's my positive spin on it, at least.
I mean, that makes sense. Now, after that conversation, I still feel like Chaim Bloom's who I thought he was. And I think, honestly, saying he's a modern-day Mo makes a ton of sense. Because I think he's Mo 2.0, the better, younger version of Mo, the one that is actually caught up. Like, if I told you Mo kind of took over in 2008, I think it was his first year, So, like, 86 wins, they miss the playoffs. Let's say they end up having the 07 season instead. If the Cardinals are a 78-win team, have back-to-back seasons where they miss the playoffs, it wouldn't shock me if in 3 years Chaim Bloom's kind of built things up and the Cardinals are back into
Agreed.
maybe not contention, but or at least a playoff caliber team.
Winning the division, I think, would be in play 3 years from now.
That wouldn't shock me at all. What I wonder about Bloom, and this is where it's going to come down to if this is going to be a success or not, I'm not questioning if he's going to build the Cardinals back up. I think he probably is the guy that's best suited for that. I think this is the perfect hire for the perfect time, as you asked him. What it comes down to is by the time you get to your 3-4, the Chaim Bloom experience, is he going to be able to do the moves that Mo wouldn't do? Which is, hey, we're right at that line. Are we going to go above that line? Are we going to always be one piece short that ends up costing us from making us a contender?
That is the question that I think is most interesting for 5 years from now. Like, when you get into, okay, this thing's running itself well. They're producing talent at the big league level. The minor league system is humming. Then what? What is the next move? His articles from 25 years ago would suggest that he's excited about like going out and getting a superstar. Is that still how he feels 25 years later? I don't know. And will the Cardinals ownership group allow for that? We'll see. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, went a little long there, but we do have a little bit of time. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Ask us anything, sports or otherwise, coming up next. You're on 101 ESPN.
You've got questions. We may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario knows questions and answers.
Presented by Window World St. Louis.com. Simply the best for less.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, we'll go ahead and get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line. As Alex tries like hell to watch the first NHL game of the regular season, which of course is being played right now.
Nobody knew that.
I try and watch it. Try and be a good friend to everybody because I can put it up on the screen. We can cast it to the television. We go, no, I don't want to watch any hockey. Just wants to stare at himself. So I'll just put it on my phone and watch it in commercial
being able
breaks.
to find out if we're on the air or not. The only way we can do that.
I think you'll know.
I think we'll know.
TV.
I don't think the TV matters. And by the way, this TV freezes all the time on us. So
Well, I don't need to watch the Sabres. I'm good. You can watch it on your phone, buddy.
the Buffalo Sabres.
From the 314, this one's for BK. Have you ever done any play-by-play? And if not, is it something that you would like to try eventually? I did play-by-play very recently for the St. Louis Blues. You might have heard me on the Blues' recent preseason.
Legendary.
Somebody on the text line mistook me for Alex Ferrario.
Which happens more than you'd think.
They congratulated me on a job well done for the play-by-play. I have done play-by-play before. I do not enjoy it. It is not something that is in my nature. I'm not good at it. I think it is incredibly difficult, and people that do it well, I think, are amazing. Like, I am shocked by how well some people do play-by-play. It is just not something that I have.
What did you do play-by-play on, by the way?
I've done football. In college, I did volleyball.
That's the worst.
I think those were the two that I've done mostly. I've done a little basketball, but not much at all. Football was the biggest one that I've done play-by-play for. But yeah, I'm not good at it. It would not be a good idea for me to continue to do it.
Well, congrats on your Blues play-by-play, man. You were great.
Thank you.
I think we have him fill in for a game for Curves this
Did
season.
you see if Curves is up for that?
Yeah, we'll just, you know what? BK wants it.
No, not my thing. All right,
That should be a punishment.
Alex,
Make him do a period of it.
That would be a punishment for everybody listening.
True. I think it'd be a punishment for you too, though.
I don't like doing things really, really poorly. Like, it makes me mad when I'm really bad at something, which happens. Like, I'm not good at everything by any stretch.
That's why he's pretty angry every day.
I just stop doing those things. When I stop doing things, I feel better about it. But one thing that I'm not good at is play-by-play, and so it really bothers me when I get done with it, and I'm doing a poor job of it. All right, from the 618, Alex, who is your favorite hockey team to watch outside of St. Louis?
Ooh.
Non-Blues edition.
I don't necessarily know if I have a team that I enjoy watching. I think it probably Carolina. Last season, Carolina was fun to watch because they just played that rough tumble style of hockey that just everybody hated. They didn't have any success with it in the postseason, but I would say that they're probably the closest to what I've enjoyed watching. Edmonton was a little fun last season too in the playoff run.
Pittsburgh used to be the team for me, but man, looking at their roster this year, they're going to be too slow for my liking. So
the Rangers are my team. Chris Kreider, my favorite player.
I know it's like sacrilegious to say, but like
Blackhawks.
The Red Wings, when they were just stacked from top to bottom, as much as you hated them because you're a Blues fan, man, you couldn't get over the fact that every time somebody came over the board, it was a Hall of Famer. Like, what is happening
It's like watching the Golden State Warriors back in the day. Like, you can hate them all you want to, but you also have to respect.
It's like you just got done with a shift of Shanahan and Yzerman, and then Brett Hull steps over the boards. Like, what is happening? Nick Lidstrom's on the ice for a 65-second shift, and then all of a sudden Chris Chelios steps over. Be like, come on, man.
One of my favorite teams to watch, basketball-wise, was the 2013 San Antonio Spurs, the team that effectively ended the Miami Heat run. I'm a LeBron honk. You guys know that. Watching that series, it's one of that is basketball perfected. Like, you can't play basketball better than that San Antonio Spurs
That was
team.
young Kawhi, right? Or was he not there yet?
Very early career Kawhi. Duncan kind of towards the end. Ginobili. Parker was unbelievable.
Lakers were that way for me with Phil Jackson.
Sure.
Like when it was Kobe and Shaq and Derek Fisher, like that was just
Robert Horry.
Yeah, they were just fun every single game.
This is T-Bone when he was like 4.
Yeah, I don't think he was
It's funny
alive.
you say that because the first Lakers team I remember was like Kobe. Derek Fisher was still there, but it was Pau Gasol.
I was just say Derek Fisher was there, but he was like 40-something.
Yeah.
All right,
He's coaching a year later.
399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for you guys to continue getting involved in the show. If you go over to YouTube, youtube.com/101ESPNSTL, you can see right now Mike McKenna is joining us in studio, the former NHL goalie. He's joining us weekly here on BK and Ferrario. We're going to have have our weekly chat with him coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Going between the pipes with former NHL goaltender Mike McKenna.
How do you like me now?
Between the Pipes is refreshed by Macadoodles. Fine wine, beer, and spirits coming soon to Darden Prairie.
Excited to do this weekly. We started it last week. It was through our stream. Today it's in person. Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie, now NHL analyst, joining us on BK and Ferrario. He's doing it on behalf of Macadoodles. He's got the swag.
Oh, yeah,
ready
he
to
does.
go today.
Oh, yeah. Full branding.
He's telling us a little bit off the air about some of the things that they're getting in. He'll tell you about that coming up at the end of this segment. Mike, appreciate the time as always, man. How you doing today?
I'm great. Like, when we get this close to the season and we're starting to, like, wind it down, like, you just feel like it's palpable. It's when you play the game, you've got the whole summer to prepare and you're still involved and immersed. Now that you're out of the game, like myself, and you get like 4 or 5 months to refresh, like I'm like craving it. I need it. Like just pump it through my veins. I need the game. So they're getting there, man.
Blues-wise, last night we got to see the new look lineup. It did not include Zach Bolduc. We talked about Bolduc a little bit last week with you. My perspective on this is that it feels like that's the lineup that we'll probably see on opening night is no Bolduc, probably have him go back down to the AHL, Kapanen back into the lineup. What do you think about the way that they've constructed this thing?
It's interesting because last week that big conversation was about the center ice position and where's the depth? Where do they slot in? Are we looking at Buchnevich all season? What about Shen? Well, it has kind of shaken itself out to what I think we will see, especially with Sundqvist being out, that down that middle, Tomase, Buchnevich, Shen, Foxa, they're all in the mix, but you do have more capable of playing that. And so for me, it's a really interesting and exciting time for the Blues because I think those pieces maybe aren't guarantees. But if you strike gold, right, what if Buchnevich turns into a monster at center? Like, he's a responsible player, two ways. Like, there's a little bit of Philip Deneau in him. He's a better skater than Deneau even, right? And he's one of the better defensive players in the league as a center with the Kings. So I think we were close last night to what you're going to see. Obviously, Brandon Saad's going to be in the mix as well. But, you know, even the D pairings there, man, it just – Broberg Falk together. It was
looked
like,
good, didn't it?
Man, this is nice, you know, and it's just for Falk, it's probably like, man, this is a kind of a little bit change of pace, you know, like Broberg's very good with the puck, but he's not quite as up in the play as Torrey Krug likes to be, and so
also a little bit of size
and the size and the reach. I mean, that really, like, you see it when you play, especially like goalie looking out at it. That big reach of D. There's a reason why teams won it. So they look good, and finally, yeah, it was what we were going to see. Very close to a Blues lineup as opposed to the smattering we've seen. They used the most players out of anybody in preseason. 50 players wore a Blue Note this preseason. And yeah, it just shows where they are as a franchise right now, right? There's some uncertainty. There's players moving in. That's a good thing. It really is, man. I like the versatility of the lineup right now.
Mike, I want to stick on the defense for a minute because last night that defense had 10 shots on goal. I think they ended with 4 points. Broberg had 2 of them. And just watching them play, you always notice the weak side D. The moment that the puck would go in, that weak side D would jump in and try and chip in offensively. And it's something Bannister talked about last season, how he likes his defensemen to get involved. And I was looking at it last night on postgame. Man, you've got guys who aren't afraid to shoot the puck now in terms of Broberg and Falk and Colton Parayko and even a Ryan Suter who just puts it on net. But you've got guys that when they jump into the rush or jump into the play, they have the offensive capability to score goals. And that's something the Blues haven't had for, I would say, a couple of years now.
Yeah, you've had a lot of puck movers, you know, and again, we reference Krug a lot. Well, he's out for the season, but one of the top puck movers in the league, but actual goal scorer. I mean, Broberg's a guy that wants to bury the puck, guys. Like, he does. He wants it there. He wants the puck on his blade. Very new style puck-moving defenseman that can also score. I think it also, like you said, comes with how Drew Bannister has now had an entire offseason. He's had an entire preseason to instill what he wants from a team. When you take over midway through a season as a coach, guys, like it's a shotgun wedding, right? So you're hoping that spaghetti just sticks to the wall, extra starch, doesn't fall off, and now he's been able to get this team to be that up-tempo squad that he would like from the back end. And but you know, part of that is it's just the it's the don't retreat mentality. You know, they do not want to hinge back. You know, as players, we say hinge back. It really just means bring the puck backwards before going forwards as D. He wants to get that thing going up ice as quick as he can. And so, again, I think this is part systematic, but it's also part kind of that injection, too, of having just as simple as a Broberg who was – he was just outside looking in Edmonton because they had so many people back there. Really.
Like, I want to stick with Broberg because – to me, and we've had a million different conversations about this. I want to get you in on it as well. He's the thing, the position, the player, the size, the age. It is everything that this team has been missing, right? They've been talking about, hey, our top 4D, that is clearly the issue for them, especially on the left side. You bring him in with that kind of a reach, that kind of potential, that kind of skating ability, and it just, even if he's not a great player immediately, there's going to be growing pains. We understand that, and that's fine. It opens up so much for what this team has the potential to be this year, next year, and 5 years down the road. What does it do for you as somebody that's played in net and you're looking out and you talked about that reach that you see? What does Broberg bring to this team that they were lacking previously?
Well, he brings range, and I think, like, in some ways, I think even in the room, it's kind of like just some new energy, really. Like, you've finally got somebody in that room that's young, that you know has had unrealized upside in the National Hockey League. And that's, you know, it's nothing against Kessel in any way. He's not the offensive juggernaut of what Broberg could be. You know, like, maybe it might have been since Pietrangelo, honestly, guys, since we've seen somebody who were actually, like, feeling some real excitement on the back end. Like, that has been a hole for the Blues, that they just haven't developed that top end, the Quinn Hughes type player, the today's model of that, what they look like, Charlie McAvoy type that can really move it. And they just managed to get one from an offer sheet
for $4 million.
And that's a reach. We know that. Like, that's the cost of taking a swing on a player who you really believe in, but you're hoping there's more to it.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of breathes an air of fresh. It's an air of freshness, man. Like I've seen this before in locker rooms where you just get somebody in there that you just feed off of that a little bit. It's not the same old, even just changing it up like that.
So on the flip side of that, Mike, he's not young, but he has been one of the most impressive forwards this preseason in Kasperi Kapanen. Last night was probably his best game so far this preseason. It sure seems like he's going to be playing in a top 9 role. You've been around the NHL for a long time. You've seen plenty of guys who have great moments one season and then fall off for a couple of years. How do you read a player like that to where he's trying to get back to who he was? He's probably fallen out of grace. I think a lot of people have the book out on Kapanen, but yet you cling on to hope and say, well, could he be something else?
Well, and that's where it's tough because he's been so good.
Yeah.
But you see this. You see it in training camp sometimes. Can it be sustained? I've seen this before. Somebody comes in. I mean, I played with a guy in Florida, Dennis Malgin. And Denny Malgin's been around the league a little bit here and there. This guy had an unbelievable rookie camp. But it was a rookie camp, okay? And all of us, like the older dudes, are all like, yeah, great job. You ripped up a bunch of 18-year-olds, But, like, for some reason, Florida at the time thought that was, like, his one-way ticket to the NHL. And he showed up and really struggled.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a mirage at the start. And with Kapanen, though, the difference is that he has done it before. It shouldn't be a mirage here. For me last year, it's just being direct. It's just attack that puck and don't stop. So you hope that all summer long, what he's gone back and reviewed about his own game and what the Blues have given him for a roadmap is, hey, we need this from you. And you're seeing it now. But that lineup should also help him, right? I mean, it takes a bit of weight off your shoulders if you got Braden Shen playing down the middle, who is going to track pucks and be hard on them and give you a little bit of space on the ice to operate. Because to me, Kasperi's a player who needs a bit of space with the puck, right? It doesn't come off his blade as quick as others, but he can shoot. He can move it. He needs that, and I think the line mates can help him do so. So let's hope it's not a mirage.
Yeah.
It hasn't been in the past. It can be there.
Yeah.
But he's also got people pushing him, right? Texier, Holloway, all these guys that are even Joseph. There's competition there.
But you've brought that not just into camp, you've brought that into the regular season because Holloway's going to be here, Texier's going to be here. You've got Saad who's going to be back, Sundqvist is going to be back. So that competition, like last season, it fell off once everybody was sent to the American Hockey League because like who am I coming out for?
There's nobody after you.
Now, if you're Kapanen one bad game, Saad's going to be back in one day. One bad game, Bolduc gets called up, and I might never see the NHL again.
Fear's a hell of a motivator, guys. I mean, like...
Especially the AHL fear.
Well, and from a guy who spent...
From a guy who played on 4 AHL teams in one season.
An awful lot of time in the American League. And I loved it. I loved playing in the American League. But that's not where you want to be.
Right.
You want to be in the show. And it's one of those things. But if you relate it to my career... Why did my career go so long? Well, even in the American League, I knew that, I got to be like a top 10 goalie to get another contract. It can be that same dynamic at the NHL. These guys are nipping at my heels. Every single night, I have to bring it. And for Kasperi, it's not just bring it. He has to find a way on the score sheet.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the bottom line. Because if he doesn't, there's other players who can take that slot.
Mike McKenna is a former NHL goalie. He's going to join us each and every Friday throughout the Blues season. We're thrilled to have this partnership with him and with Macadoodles. Macadoodles doing some really cool stuff with you. Mike, tell us a little bit about what you guys have going on right now. I know we were talking about this prior to you coming on the air with us as well.
Macadoodles, fine wine, beer, and spirits in Darden Prairie, Missouri. So we're at the corner of Brian Feisey Road. Now, we're not open yet. We're going to be open towards the end of October here, hopefully. And I'll tell you what, it's Missouri-owned. It's Missouri-operated. Hey, man, I'm the GM. So it's like, come on in and say hi. But, this is my baby. I've taken this role on, and we'll be running out single-barrel bourbons. We'll be running out an unbelievable beer program. You name it, all the spirits. We're going to have 2,700 different SKUs of fine wine, and we're not just talking fine. We're not just talking Camus, and we're not talking gutter, okay? Not $2 Chuck. We're going to have so many wines between that $12 and $30 price point, the everyday, the weekend, the good stuff you can get and really enjoy. I've become passionate about it. We got some great people coming on board. We've got knowledgeable staff, fun staff, unpretentious, T-shirts, backwards hats, come in, enjoy it, have fun. It's kind of got that elevated clan, but look, we got all the exposed wood and kind of like you could see Bigfoot just roll up out front, you know, Momo the monster.
I'm going to go find you one of those statues to put right out front then. Why not?
So, hey, man, it's my store. We're passionate about it. Bottom line, though, we're going to have a lot of fun. If you walk in that store and we don't have an answer for you, we're going to find it for you.
If you're a whiskey or bourbon guy like me and Alex and T-Bone are, going to have some store picks out there, going to have some single barrels, so looking forward to that. We'll have some announcement with that as we go along here. Mike, appreciate the time as always, man. This has been great. Looking forward to doing this each and every week. Thanks so much as always.
BK Ferrario, appreciate it. I love that you let Tanner out of the cage. It's great.
That's what we do, man.
You're looking good here, buddy.
It only happens every once in a while, but we do occasionally let him out here with us. It's Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie. We're going to have him on each and every week throughout the NHL season here on BK and Ferrario. Again, that's on behalf of Macadoodles. Coming up next, the Brewers are running into the same issues as the Cardinals once they get into the postseason. What is going on with this NL Central? There's a crazy stat that T-Bone unearthed last night about it. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
We're back to more exclusive Blues talk. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. If you missed any of our conversation with the one, the only Mike McKenna, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Center.
We're going to talk about the Brewers, the NL Central, and all the struggles that this division has had in the postseason here in just a moment. But, guys, we're broadcasting live out here at the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center, and I just got to bring something up on the air. So we have cameras. We have televisions behind us that just flash across the screen like Jamie Rivers, Alex Ferrario. It's just like Danny Mac, just names on it that are featured on the shows. Mine just says Kylie.
Okay.
But It's spelled K-Y-L-E-Y.
Oh. I actually think that's a little bit more intimidating than K-I-L-E-Y.
Yeah.
I think you should stick with that.
European.
Now, I'll bring this to the air.
Eastern European.
It previously, up until like 2 weeks ago, had like the pre-COVID shows listed. So it has been updated, which I do appreciate.
Were you the one that complained about it? Because
No.
that's why they misspelled your name.
I didn't say a word about it. I didn't say a word about it.
They were like, oh, this Kylie cat over here is the one that tried to get us to fix this, so now we're going to give him a Y.
I do love that their update was correct on everything except for my last name. And all they had to do to avoid it, if there was any question about how do I spell Kylie, all you had to do was just BK. Just put BK. It's super easy. That's what I go by on the air anyways.
I'm just glad my $20 went to good use, and
Like-
somebody noticed.
Danny Mac is up there. It just says Danny Mac. It doesn't say Dan McLaughlin. It just says Danny Mac. But they had to go with Kylie.
They should have went Brandon in all caps.
Yeah.
Brandon.
You know what? I'm glad I'm not on the board now.
Yeah. You're glad T-Bone didn't just fly
Yeah.
up there?
Yeah.
What does it say? Did
They spell Ferrario correct? That's the real question.
I think they did.
Because
I
if
think
they got, oh my God, I just
Oh,
saw
I
it.
just
That's
saw it.
so great. They also have BK and Ferrario.
Yeah.
So
it-
why
it
is
shows-
Kylie with...
K-Y-L-E-Y.
I wonder if that Kylie is not supposed to be there. They're like, wait a minute. Was that supposed to be somebody else?
It's got Carrie David. It just like, it shows all of the show names.
Is that supposed to be like
first.
salts?
Yeah, it's like the show names, and then it's Danny Mac, Carrie, Rivers, Kylie. It's not even everybody. It's just 4 different people. I love
They
it.
had to get Kylie.
I'm sure BK had to
love
make sure his name was showing up there twice.
All right. So,
Someone said it sounds like BK is about to start crying.
I'm just emotional about it, man.
Hey, man, you work really hard to get that name up there in lights. You want it spelled correctly.
I'm just appreciative that they remember that I'm a part of the station.
Well, they said
that's
it
not
twice.
technically
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, technically that's somebody else. We just
Yeah.
don't know.
There's somebody else in the building named Kylie.
So the Brewers lose yesterday. They lost in dramatic fashion. It was amazing.
It was so good.
They now have done basically nothing in the postseason in the last 8 years. Like, since 2016, if you put a blind resume of playoff success for the Cardinals and for the Brewers, and I didn't tell you which one was
You want
which.
to do this? I got the numbers.
Let's go ahead and do it.
All right.
But give me the. Don't tell me who it
Yeah.
is.
I won't.
Give me the numbers. We'll tell you which
tell
one's
me
the
the
Cardinals.
2 resumes,
I'm
and we'll
going-
tell you which one is the
I'm
Cardinals.
going since 2015, so
Okay.
it's been almost a decade, 9 years. All right, team number 1 has won 4 NL Central crowns, has made 6 playoff appearances, has won only 1 playoff series, and made the NLCS once.
Okay.
Team number 2.
What was the time frame? It was the last
Since 2015.
2015?
Last
Okay.
9 years, almost a decade. Team number 2, 3 NL Central crowns, 5 playoff appearances, 1 playoff series win to go with 1 NLCS appearance. All right, you tell me which team is which.
Trick question. It's the Spider-Man meme. They're the same team.
I think the first one was the Brewers.
I
right?
think the second one was the Cardinals.
The first one was the Brewers. The second one was the
Okay.
Cardinals.
they're the
Yikes.
same.
Yeah. The only difference is Brewers have won 1 more NL Central title, and they've made 1 more playoff appearance than you.
They do the same things, and we've talked about this before. The Brewers took the Cardinals model, and they're doing it a little bit better. The thing is, both models result in the same thing in the postseason, which is no success. And I think some of this is just the randomness of baseball. Some of this is, hey, when you get into the postseason, it's you shake up the globe and you find out what comes out on the top, right? But baseball's weird. And there are things, though, that I believe that you can do to give yourself a better chance. And for whatever reason, everybody in the NL Central is having no chance once you get to the postseason. 2019 was the last time that this division has a win.
Yeah. And
in a series.
The last
in the
playoff
postseason.
series win was 2019 by
The Cardinals.
your St. Louis Cardinals.
That's
Well, now you know why the
Congrats, Cardinals fans. You should be happy.
Well, now you know why the Cardinals have gotten to the point where the DeWitts were like, well, look, we were winning. Well, what was the problem? You were winning because the NL Central was not very good.
That's insane. 5 years since the last time that your division has won a series, not has gotten to the NLCS, although that is the case, not has reached the world. 5 years since this division won a series in the postseason. That speaks to something, man. Like, again, baseball, the postseason can be random. The Tigers are now in the ALDS. I don't think that the Tigers are one of the 8 best teams in Major League Baseball this season. I don't believe that. I don't believe that they're one of the 8 best teams right now. But they're in they're in the ALDS, and that's all that matters. Like that ultimately is how you define success for your season. The Central Division has some issues.
The lack of competitiveness has pushed the Cardinals into this position because the Milwaukee Brewers are always a team that on paper looks like they're going to be inferior to you, and so you're not trying to build a juggernaut to beat a juggernaut. You're trying to build an adequate team to beat a team that's like, they'll be fine. And then the Milwaukee Brewers just come out of nowhere, but they're the prototypical regular season team versus the postseason team. And then everybody else below you are the Pirates, are the Reds, the Cubs, who at least spend money, but you always know that the Cubs are just kind of up and down, and then the Reds and Pirates are never competitive. What would be the incentive for a team in the NL Central to sit there and say, we need to go out there and spend money? We need to go trade our top prospects to go get a major league stud who can help us win when you know what the NL Central looks like?
By the way, I heard the Fast Lane talking about this yesterday, and I thought it was a really interesting conversation because I think there's fair points on both sides of it. They brought up the idea that, like, who deserves more blame? Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt for never having success in the postseason with the Cardinals, or the Cardinals for never being able to put a team around Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt to have success in their time here? And the truth is both. Like, they deserve blame for not doing anything.
Yeah, that's a two-sided.
The Cardinals also deserve blame for not putting the pitching together to be able to capitalize in 2021 or 2022, right?
Totally.
Like, so the answer is both, but if you were to have to put one side or the other, like what I watched yesterday from Pete Alonso, just as an example, because Pete Alonso has now played 6 postseason games with the Mets, and prior to yesterday, Mets fans were furious with Pete Alonso. Furious. They're like, this dude can't come through in the big moments. He's just not the guy. And then he had the biggest possible moment in a huge win for the Mets. Hitting that home run was like,
I looked at JR and I said, the moment he hit it, I said, he just added $100 million into his wallet this offseason.
The funny thing is like from the outside perspective, because I'm not a Mets fan, so I don't watch the Mets every single day. You know what my thought was when Williams missed and it went 3-1? I went, Pete Alonso's going to come through.
He's going to make him pay.
And you're right. Like, he hasn't had playoff success, but someone from the outside, when it was 3-1, I said, Williams doesn't have his command. Pete Alonso's going to come through. Now, I didn't expect a 3-run bomb the other way, but I thought he was going to come through.
That home run is what Arenado and Goldie have been missing. Like, what's the biggest moment in the playoffs that those guys have had? It's probably sometime in 2019, when Goldie was part of the roster that ended up going to the NLCS that year.
But I don't know if he ever had a moment on that run.
Oh, yeah, Goldie was here. Arenado wasn't here.
No. Arenado has not had a postseason
I don't even think Goldie had a big moment in that run.
Yeah.
Yachty was the one that
Yachty had the moment against the Braves.
He had the walk-off sacrifice line.
But, like, that's the thing that is different from their legacies compared to basically every other all-time great player that has played here in St. Louis is, like, they have moments.
Yeah.
And the moments that you remember in St. Louis, because of the history here, it's so rich, are postseason moments. Pete Alonso just had one yesterday. That is the moment that gets you remembered forever. Like, Matt Adams has a playoff moment unlike anything that Arenado or Goldie were ever able to produce here in St. Louis. And that's what's missing from their resume.
Yep.
And it's what will forever be missing from their resume because there's a decent chance they never get them.
It's why I've always, and you've gotten angry with me because you get pre-mad, but I get pre-mad. I was never able to invest in a team of being like, hey, man, anything can happen in the postseason because I saw it in 2019. I saw it in 2020. You saw it in 2021. I know it was one game, and I know it's a small sample size, but that one game, they had their moment. And what did they do? They struck out. Tyler O'Neill was the same way. This was the dude that had an MVP-esque season. And what happened in the postseason? He struck out. I mean, you got to be able to.
They pinch hit for him in the postseason.
Yeah, it's one thing to be a regular season hero, and it's another thing to be a postseason hero. And I don't think the Cardinals have had a postseason hero since Yachty or Molina was on that roster, and you're still searching for it.
Well, I think the part for Paul Goldschmidt, and the reason I bring this up is because my dad, big Cardinals fan, and in 2022, you got to remember Goldie at the end of September is going through it. There's questions if he ends up winning his MVP.
Correct.
He doesn't have the big moment. He has the moment that. I don't know if a lot of fans remember it, but if you think back on Paul Goldschmidt, he has the opposite of the moment. He has the moment where he went to the plate and you said, oh, he's not going to come through.
Yeah.
Because you look at that 2022 wild card game 2, the Cardinals have runners at first and second, and there is one out. You've got Paul Goldschmidt coming up to the plate, and you had no faith he was going to come through. What's he do? He strikes out.
Arenado
What's Nolan Arenado
does the
do?
same thing,
He strikes out on 4 pitches. Goldie at least put a competitive bat with 8. Like, that's the moment right there. That's the moment where they can come through and potentially have something to point to in their legacy, and instead it's the complete opposite.
I remember discussing that series the following Monday when we were breaking everything down, and like so many pointed back to all these decisions, and I was like, listen, like ultimately it comes down to one thing. You got two dudes in the middle of your order that had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. It's not like those were blowout games in that series. They were close. Pitching, honestly, was fine for the Cardinals in that series against the Phillies. Your big guys didn't come through, and that's what lost you the series. And so, like, some of it is on the Cardinals. Should they have put together better teams? Sure, you can criticize them up and down, and that's reasonable. Those guys didn't come through when they had the chance to do so. And it's 2 games, so, like, in any 2-game stretch of any player's career, you could probably go through. There's probably a 2-game stretch early on in any point of Derek Jeter's postseason career where he's remembered as like Mr. October for them, basically. Like, you can go through and you can find 2 games where he didn't come through, and if they were a 3-game set, the way that it was for the Cardinals, where you're out after that, he would be remembered differently. But those guys didn't come through.
Somebody just brought up a great point on the Air Comfort Service text line. Juan Yepes has a bigger postseason moment than Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt.
Yeah.
And that tells you right there that Goldschmidt and Arenado had their opportunities. Yes, you can blame the Cardinals for not getting the pitching and surrounding them. That was a regular season problem. But when you got to the postseason, pitching kept it competent. What didn't was your offense. And those were the guys that were MVPs in the regular season, but when the postseason showed up, they didn't come up with a big hit, and that was always a problem for the Cardinals.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. We're broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. We've got Grant Francis back in the studio for us today. Coming up next, we're going to get to round 2. First month is over. Alex Ferrario is going to get his punishment. Round 2 of the Pick'em Challenge is coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues winners last night in their final preseason game on home ice as they took down the Dallas Stars 4-3 in overtime. Thanks for a game-winning goal by Jordan Kyrou. Blues are now 2-4 on the preseason, and they'll have their last preseason game tomorrow in Milwaukee as they take on the Chicago Blackhawks to close down the preseason. They'll get set for their first regular season game coming up on Tuesday in Seattle. And a little Cardinals news to hand along from earlier today. They're parting ways with their hitting coach, Turner Ward. And tonight on 101 ESPN, you can hear some college football action as number 25 ranked UNLV will take on Syracuse, hoping to preserve their undefeated 4-0 record so far on the season. You can hear the pregame for that starting at 7:30. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Grant Francis back in the studio for us today. We're broadcasting at the E&B Granite Studios out at the Centene Community Ice Center, and it is time for our weekly pick-up here on BK and Ferrario. This is round 2 of the pick-up because last week was the end of the first month of our pick-up challenge. Alex Ferrario is bringing up the rear. He lost the first month, which means that he is going to serve the first punishment. I have just tweeted this out. At BK Sports Talk is where you can find me for the first Pick'em Challenge punishment vote. There are 2 options for you. Alex will either have an egg smash roulette where he smashes a dozen eggs over his head. Some of them are hard-boiled. Others are not. He will have no idea which is which. You just got to crack them over your head, see what happens. A dozen times over and
Good thing
over
I got a hard
and
head.
over again. Option B, you're taped to a chair for an entire show. So you spend an entire 3-hour show duct taped to a chair. You can vote for your choice over on Twitter at BK Sports Talk. You will serve that punishment next week. But it is time for this week's Pick'em Challenge. Alex, the rules are very simple. You get 3 picks. Scale of 1 to 3, 1 point, 2 point, 3 point. It is purely against the spread. No props, no point totals. Only rule really is that it has to be a game that is played prior to us coming back on the air on Monday morning. Alex, what is your 1 point play?
I guess I got to start, don't I? Because I'm the loser and I got to go with this.
Yep.
Unbelievable. All right, 1 point play for me on this one. I'm taking the Raiders.
Who do they play?
The Broncos.
Oh, I did see
And
this one.
the Raiders are the underdog. Now, I understand.
Raiders.
Not a lot of good vibes going right now with Devontae Adams and this Vegas Raiders team.
I'm sure it's fine.
I don't like Denver. I don't think Denver's any good. I know Bo Nix just had his moment, but I like the +3. I think that'll be close because I'm not sure either offense is that great. So I like the Raiders +3 is my 1 point play.
I don't.
That's great for me because you just picked the same one as I did last week on the 3 point, and that went the other direction.
All right, so that is your 1 point play. My 1 point play, I'm going back to the college game, boys. Game of the week. Everybody's going to be paying attention to this one.
Oh, no. This is either he's going with his boys again, which has failed him twice.
He's going to pick
Or
Army.
he's going to pick, like, the game tonight, which is, like, there's probably some Mountain West team playing somebody.
Tomorrow night on True TV.
Oh, my gosh.
It's a 6:30 kick as the Nevada Wolfpack
Get out.
take
No.
on
No.
San Jose
No.
State.
This is ridiculous. He's pulling out these weird bets. Somebody is giving him this information.
San Jose State
Trash.
is a 7-point home favorite, and they should be 10+. Their quarterback, Emmett Brown, is a sophomore. He's a Washington State transfer. And he just took it to Washington State last week in what was a revenge game for him, putting up a boatload of yards. So far this year, through 4 games, he's thrown for 1,300 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. This kid is an absolute stud. And he's going to take it to the Nevada Wolfpack. Give me San Jose State minus the 7 points. They're going to throw the ball all over the yard against Nevada. Love San Jose State big at home.
I don't even know how to break down that.
He's
bet.
got a shark that's sending him these
I know.
picks.
He definitely does. All right.
I'll find out what kind of a legal scam you got going on, and I will expose you by the end of this, and you will do all of the punishments that we had to suffer.
All right, my 1-point play, guys, they're not as scary as their name suggests they are. But they're due with the due factor. Never fails, and I feel really good about this because Jonathan Taylor just got rolled out. Oh. And without Jonathan Taylor, the YOLO offense is going to struggle, I still believe.
Hey,
so
does this sound familiar? Somebody saying that, and then Joe Flacco stepped onto the field?
Well, that's what worries me about this, but I'm still going to go with it. Jaguars minus 2.5 against the Colts. Better line on our friends, the Circus Sportsbook app. So give me the Jags minus the 2.5 against Indianapolis. I think they get their first win of the season. I think Anthony Richards is going to play, and if he plays, they're going to end up losing this football game by 3+.
I made the out loud statement when that news came out, and then BK was like, really going to do it against the Colts again? And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot Joe freaking Magic Man Flacco was the one that won that game, and he's going to do it again. Terrible pick, sir. Mine's not a terrible pick.
Nah.
You boys ready for this one? I'm going a little division battle for my 2-point play. Give me the Ravens at minus 2.5. I like this. I think Derrick Henry is in like ultimate king mode right now.
They're minus 2.5 at the Bengals?
Minus 2.5 at the Bengals right now. I'm skeptical of that offensive line, but I'm not skeptical of Derrick Henry. And frankly, I'm still out on the Cincinnati Bengals offense. It doesn't give me the same vibes. I like Baltimore in this one. I think a rivalry matchup for Baltimore is going to go in their direction.
I thought about that one too. I still don't trust either team well enough to put my faith in them.
All right, you want to make one that's going to...
If you pull another college football of like borderline D2 school.
He's going FCS.
No, I'm not
going to start betting Lindenwood. I'm going to start pulling up Lindenwood football spreads, and that's going to be my 3-point play.
I'm not doing that. I will say this is one that you like. It's a nose plug game, and what I mean by that is you got to plug your nose to decide to pick it. I don't feel good about this one, boys. It doesn't bring me joy to select this as one of my picks for the week. But the Browns are a 3.5-point road underdog against the Commanders. Let me read you off the Commanders' schedule so far this year. They have gone up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they got beat in that one 37-20. The Bucs are a real team. I think we saw that last night. I think the Bucs are a good team. They lost that game, but they played well. I think the Bucs are good. Then they played against the Giants, the Bengals, and the Cardinals, all of whom are not good. And the Bengals and the Cardinals have two of the worst defenses that we've seen in the NFL so far this year. And the offense has looked spectacular in those games. The Cleveland Browns stink offensively, but they have a real defense. And I think they're going to speed up Jaden Daniels. And I say that as somebody that loves Jaden Daniels. I think this is going to be a much tougher task for them. I think the Browns win this game outright. I think they do so like 23-20. It's going to be close, but that's why I like it. I've got the Browns plus the 3.5 points on the road at the Commanders. It's a plug your nose game, but I think they find a way to pull it out.
I don't know if I could ever take the side of Deshaun Watson with that team. I just have no faith in him, and I think he's the guy that ends up costing you this weekend. Deshaun Watson will come back to bite you with that 2-point play.
Somebody on the text line said the next thing BK is going to pick is the DeSmet game. You know you can't bet on Circa for high school games. Come on. If it was available, I would.
Ridiculous.
I'll have CBC next week.
Yeah,
I'm going to start betting Lindenwood football games. That's my 3-point play from now on.
Alma Mater. I'm going with SEMO for now on.
I'm going to go slew high as my lines.
My 2-point play, speaking of a bird, I'm going to go with the Seattle Seahawks at home against the New York Giants. It's a little bit of a hefty spread. It's at minus 6.5. If it was at 7, I wouldn't take this game.
Have you seen what the big favorites are doing so far this year?
I've seen what the big favorites have done. I trust the Seattle defense.
I did this last week with Houston.
The offense had another good week against the Detroit Lions. They just lost that shootout. I think you're going to see the Seattle Seahawks put the Giants in their place. So give me Seattle minus 6.5 as my 2-point play.
Man.
You ready for this one?
I guess so. I didn't like that one by too long. That's too many points.
Open up your headlines, boys, because it's time to wakey with some eggs and bakey out in London.
Oh,
Vikings minus 2.5.
I can't tell you how scared I
don't
am
care.
to take a bet on
I really don't care.
London game.
You know what I'm not scared of? The Jets. I'm not scared of the Jets. They're like, we need to get Devontae Adams right now. Aaron Rodgers doesn't like Robert Saleh. Aaron Rodgers doesn't like Breece Hall or Garrett Wilson. Guess what, Aaron? That's your entire offense. Vikings have no problems with their offense right now. Their defense is one of the best in the National Football League. Easy line for me. That could have been 3, and I would have taken it. I think Vikings are going to win that no problem.
You know my rule.
Don't care.
I don't bet on London games.
Yeah,
anything that's overseas, I just don't trust it. Weird stuff happens in those games. I think the Vikings are the better side. If I'm going to bet this game, especially at 2.5, I like that side personally. But I would like it if it was in Minnesota, much more so than I like it in London.
That game could be played in Timbuktu, and I'd be good with the Vikings right now.
That's fair. Touche. You're going to go with Sam Darnold and feel good about it, and I respect that about you. All right, my last pick of the week, my 3-point play. I went with them last week, and it let me down.
Don't do it again.
I think the Bills are just a better team than the Texans. Just flat out better football team. And they're an underdog getting points on the road at Houston. It's a road game. Don't love that about them. But I think their defense is going to make things a little difficult on C.J. Stroud. And I think their offense can give some serious troubles to the Houston Texans. Last I had seen, I don't think Joe Mixon is going to be able to play in this one either. They have no running game. No running game whatsoever. Their passing game is way too predictable on third downs. They have not yet run a run play on a third down in this season. They're tipping their plays. When they're under center, they're running more often. When they're in shotgun, they're almost always throwing. Like they're tipping some of what they're doing offensively. They're going to have to figure that out. It's like last night, Devin Williams tipping his pitches. Hey, man, if you're going to be in a big game like that against a good opponent, they're going to figure it out. The Bills are a good opponent. I think last week was a fluke. I do not think we see that again. Bills will be highly motivated. This is the kind of game they've got to win if they want home field advantage in the AFC. Give me the Bills. I would take them on the money line, but +1 on the road at the Texans.
I like that one. I almost considered that one. That was in my handful of games that I was considering. But my 3-point play, guys, I wish 2 weeks ago I would have taken this team because they're playing the awful NC State Wolfpack. And I didn't. It almost cost me. Luckily, I was able to come back and avoid punishment. This team, again, is playing an awful ACC opponent, and that is the Florida State Seminoles. That team stinks. That is one of the worst Power 4. That might be the worst Power 4 football team going right now. Give me the Clemson Tigers at Florida State -14.5 points. That hook scares me a little bit, but I think Florida State's awful. I think Clemson's going to end up kicking the crap out of them. So give me Clemson -14.5.
You got 14.5?
I don't like. Ooh, that hook's going to hurt.
I think that's a good pick.
That hook's
I like that.
hurt.
I looked at them. Too many points for me, but I like it. I think the worst pick on this slate is the Seahawks -6.5.
It's the Nevada-San Jose State game.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's probably the best pick because he's got some illegal BS going in this competition.
On the season, I'll have to look through some of my numbers, but teams that are bet as 5.5-point favorites or more are like, I think it's like 2-22 or something like that.
That smells dew factor.
On the season.
No, that's not what you're smelling.
I think the worst bet's the one in London. I could never bet on a game in London.
The most popular side so far this year, or this week, according to Ben Fox, who does stuff for ESPN.com. Vikings -2. The Ravens -2.5. In other words, Alex's picks. The Commanders -3.5, so I'm on the other side of that one. And the public has been terrible so far this year. They've been getting their butts whipped by Vegas. Bills +1 is very much a public side, so I've got one of the sharp side, one of the public side, and then Bears -4 against the Panthers is another one. T-Bone does not have any that are on this.
See, I know what I'm doing.
Public versus the
question me.
Here's my scared
sharp
face.
side.
Well, that's the face that's going to be egged potentially next week.
Fine by me.
Don't forget to vote on Alex's punishment. You can do that over on Twitter at BK Sports Talk. We will get to our pick'em reveal on Tuesday. I'm going to be on the morning show on Monday. You guys know I don't actually do our show on Mondays.
No, of course not. Why would you?
On Tuesday, we will do our pick'em reveal, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Coming up in about 10 minutes or so, Mizzou's entering a Prove It week, but next, the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN.
Let's open it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Brought to you by Fenton Bar and Grill. Best trashed wings in Missouri. Dine in, carry out, 7 days a week.
Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, one of my favorite things about sports, and maybe this says a lot about me, is the jubilation in wins and the agony that comes in defeat. And you can feel that more in a postseason experience than you can anywhere else in life. I love the feeling of feeling alive, right? Like you're watching a game, and man, when you are in it, you can really feel it, especially as a fan. And I think local broadcasters give that energy off better than just about anybody. So I wanted to take a moment to relive what it was like last night. If you were a Mets fan or a Brewers fan in a winner-take-all experience where Pete Alonso gives the Mets the go-ahead home run. So first...
Hold on. Are we going to play? Was Bob Uecker on the call for this Brewers one?
He was.
Dude, I don't want to hear everybody's favorite grandpa on a call of his team losing.
We'll give it a sec.
Oh, man.
First, let's hear the winning side. Here is what it sounded like on the Mets radio network when Pete Alonso hit the go-ahead home run.
Williams sets. Here's the pitch. Swinging a fly ball to right field. Pretty well hit. Fielded back at the wall. He jumps. It's gone. He did it. He did it. Pete Alonso with the most memorable home run of his career. Pumps his fist as he rounds second. It's a 3-run homer. He's given the Mets a 3-2 lead. They all pour out of the dugout. Alonso on his way to home plate. They're waiting for him. He hits the plate. He is first congratulated by Nimmo. Hugged by Lindor. There are a dozen Mets waiting for him outside the dugout. Pete Alonso keeps this fairy tale season going with the fairy tale swing of his career. 3-2 New York.
Crushed it.
Amazing call.
I mean, that is like 100 out of 100.
Dude,
that was amazing.
I said earlier, I can't imagine being a play-by-play announcer crushing a big moment like that. That is a potential career-defining call. Now, it's not in a World Series. I understand that. It's a wild card round, but that was a tremendous call by Howie Rose.
I felt like I was rounding the bases with Pete Alonso. Like, that's what, like, I felt like I was Pete Alonso on that call. You heard him every step he took from home plate to home plate. You felt it. That was sensational what Howie Rose did there.
Here's how historic that home run was. Lead flipping home runs in the 9th inning or later of a winner-take-all postseason game. Last night was the first one in the history of the sport. That was it. That was the first time what you witnessed last night, and it's the old saying, right? If you watch a baseball game, you never know if you're going to see something that's never happened before. Last night you did. Nobody has ever done what Pete Alonso accomplished last night for the Mets. And so, on the plus side is what the Mets got to experience last night, and you got to hear that call. On the other side, Alex.
That's going to be tough to hear.
Dude,
is what the Brewers experienced last night.
I mentally don't think I can handle this.
The agony of defeat. When your team has it, they have it in their grasp. And you've got a guy on the mound in Devin Williams who is unhittable. This never happens against him. In fact, before last night, Devin Williams had entered 243 games in his major league career. 243. In 2 of them, had he allowed 4 or more runs. And then last night, in the biggest night of his life, he allowed 4 runs and the blown save. And here's what it sounded like on the Brewers radio network as they call the final out of the game and realize the season is officially over.
Well, New York down. They did it. And the crew will have it end here tonight.
Really a crushing end to what was a fabulous season for the Milwaukee Brewers.
I'm telling you, that one had some sting on it.
Why, man? It's like making me watch Old Yeller again when I was 8 years old.
What's your most agonizing defeat as a fan? Because that, like Brewers fans, that's going to be up there, dude.
That one's going to be bad.
There's no question for me. It's the Yzerman goal from the red line against the Red Wings beating the Blues, because that team had the chance to win the Stanley Cup. And that Yzerman shot was the worst shot. Like, he's got some zip on it because it's Steve freaking Yzerman, but Grant Fuhr was injured. You had your backup in that game. It's a shot from the freaking red line, and you had a team that was built to win the Stanley Cup. That's the one for me.
T-Bone?
I'm trying to think of the one for me.
Because if you don't have one immediately, I've got one for you.
What's yours?
For me, it's Mizzou versus Norfolk State.
Oh, yeah, that one will never go away.
It crushed me, dude. That was one of my favorite teams I've ever followed as a Missouri fan, was that team that ended up being able to do it with Frank Haith. It was the we'll reconcile by winning team, and they went out there. There's 7 dudes. That's it. It was 7 guys on the roster. And they went out there and put together. They were an unbelievable team to watch. They were 4 out, and they get into the tournament, and, like, I thought they had a real chance to win the championship that year, like a real chance to be able to do it. I loved the guys on that team. Kim English is one of my favorite Tigers ever. And to lose that way against freaking Norfolk State, I genuinely did not believe they were going to lose until they missed the final shot. At no point in the game did I think they would lose. And then it all hits you suddenly, and you're like, oh my, we lost to Norfolk State? Norfolk?
T-Bone knows that feeling.
I was going to say, my most recent one is Illinois getting just destroyed by UConn in the buzzsaw that they were. Because I thought that team could win it all.
Dude, see, like, Mizzou has lost to teams that are better than them, and it doesn't. Like, they lost against Auburn in that SEC championship game from the football side. Whatever. It sucked. I didn't enjoy watching Trey Mason run all over them, but it is what it is. That team was amazing. Losing to Norfolk felt crushing.
I need to correct myself because the slap shot from Yzerman was from the blue line, not the red line.
That's a hell of a long
Sorry, though, because look, 6-year-old Alex,
dude, in my mind,
felt like it was from the red line.
In my mind, I could totally see why you were destroyed.
6-year-old me felt like that was from the red line, because if you go back and watch the video of it, the replay that they show is from behind the net. And so all you see is Steve Yzerman up by the Blues lines, or on the Blues bench, and it's just he just heaves up and takes a slap shot. Listen to this team that the Blues had that lost in the 96, what was that, double overtime, Game 7? Brett Hall had 43 goals and 83 points that season. Al McKenna had 61 points. You had Jeff Courtnall. You had Chris Pronger, Wayne Gretzky. You had like 6 different Hall of Famers. Grant Fuhr that season had won 30 games and started in 79 of them. That team was built to win the Stanley Cup, and they ran into a buzzsaw.
Started how many games?
79 games.
Oh my!
And he would have played 82. He got injured.
Oh my God!
I think I know the one for me that really stung, and people here in St. Louis are not gonna like it. And the reason is I'm still a Rams fan, but the first time in my life that the Rams were like that, I can remember them being good, because I was like 3 months old when or 6 months old when they won the Super Bowl in '99. I don't remember the 01 team. They were always bad when they were in St. Louis in my lifetime. Was that Super Bowl loss to the Patriots?
Oh yeah,
because that team was unbelievable. You had Sean McVay, who was doing this unbelievable job. They had Todd Gurley, but Todd Gurley doesn't end up playing in that game much because he's dealing with a knee injury. I think they had like Brandon Cooks, I think was maybe on that team, or Robert Woods was on that team. Cooks might have been as well. But that team was unbelievably stacked. Their defense was awesome. They had Aaron Donald. And they lost to Tom freaking Brady and the New England Patriots. That one is probably the one for me that really stinks, because they were never – it was a close game, but they weren't competitive. They could do nothing offensively.
Article just popped up on Twitter for me. Christian Yelich says talking to Bob Uecker after playoff loss was the hardest part.
Oh.
Yeah, no joke. You just disappointed Mr. Rogers, man.
I mean, he didn't do anything.
Yeah,
well, technically, he didn't do anything, but yeah, I don't think
he was as much a part of it as you, me, and T.
I wouldn't be speaking to Bob Uecker. I would feel awful that I let that kind man down.
Devin Williams is the one who should talk to.
No, Devin Williams wasn't speaking to anybody.
That one was crushing.
Yeah.
If you're a Brewers fan, that's one that sticks with you.
Well, I actually feel bad for Devin Williams in that spot. Like from the personal side.
Don't tip your pitches. Be better.
Okay. Jerk.
I'm sorry, man. Like,
imagine what that dude is going through right now.
Yeah, it sucks. It's
like, I mean, like, you gotta be, and these athletes are a lot stronger than we are, but mentally you're broken.
Well, the tough part for Devin Williams is, like, that's probably his lasting legacy in Milwaukee. I wouldn't doubt if they try to trade him this offseason. Because he's getting, I don't know where he's at in arbitration, but he's always been kind of rumored to be floating around.
That's the mental side of the
Imagine that
athlete.
being your lasting memory.
You don't come back from that. Like, if you get moved after that moment, that's a tough thing to come back from as an athlete.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Somebody on the text line said, guys, you got to get the Brewers call of that Pete Alonso home run. I'll get that for you. We'll hear it on the other side. And why this week is a Prove It week for Missouri. That's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
We're back to more exclusive Blues talk. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
All right, in the last segment, we talked a little bit about the joy that comes with a big win, the way that the Mets did last night.
For some people, the joy.
And what I prefer, the agony that comes with the defeat. I love listening to sports radio in a city, more so in the city that loses one of those kinds of disastrous games.
And I'm
than
the
city
jerk
that
on this
wins
show.
it. Oh, it brings me so much joy. Like, I don't want to listen to New York sports radio today where they're going to be all excited about Pete Alonso. No. Let me hear what they have to say today in Milwaukee, where they just went through one of the most crushing losses that you will ever see as a fan. That's what I want to hear. Again, as I mentioned in the last segment, no player has ever hit a home run in the ninth inning or later of a season-ending game, potentially an elimination game in the postseason until last night. And then Pete Alonso did it, and that's the way that you lose as a Brewers fan. So let's go ahead and take a listen. Once again, this is the call that was heard on Brewers Radio Network last night.
Enough of Euchre.
Bob Euchre on the call as they blow their season. It's over. Pete Alonso just hit the home run that sends the Mets to the NLDS. Here's what it sounded like.
And the pitch. Hit in the air to right. Deep warning track and gone. Peter Alonso just put New York on top in this one with a 3-run home run to right field. And just like that, a 2-0 lead is now a 3-2 deficit that quickly. Wow.
Not enough sadness.
Oh, that's still
Not enough.
What are you talking about? Did you hear the spaces in between the sentences that he was saying?
I feel like he's about to cry.
He was choking up on those. Plus, did you hear him call him Peter?
Yeah.
He called him Peter Alonso. Like, that's when you know Bob's upset.
He's 90. I mean, that's what you do when you're 90 years old. You call everybody by their true given name.
Look, man, I do like pain from some people. Like, I like when BK's upset. I got a picture of it, actually, and I look at it probably weekly for a good laugh.
Logo.
Yeah, it pleases me. Not when it's a dude that's 90 years old who's been in like a ton of my favorite movies.
It's not about him. It's about what he represents, which is Brewers fans and the tears that they are shedding as Pete Alonso hits the home run that sent them all into a that gasp, right? You all know the look of the person that just experienced the horror that is, oh my God, my team just blew it.
I get it, but if it was like somebody who was more of a jerk, I'd be with you. But it's Bob freaking Uecker.
Yeah, no, man. This is what I live for, is moments like that.
The poor guy at the end of it, and he's just like, it's devastating.
Wow. That was the reaction. Wow.
In all reality, Bob's probably thinking, it's like, well, that's off-season mode.
My son, when he walks around the house, just goes, wow. That's just what he does right now. And that was effectively the dynamite drop-in that the color analyst had last night on the Brewers radio network after they are effectively eliminated from postseason.
I mean, what other word could you use in that situation?
Not one I could use.
Yeah, I was going to say that's why he was taking so long in between sentences, because Bob's trying to like filter through all of the F and S bombs that are coming to his front of the mind.
All right, so that's what it sounded like yesterday. Again, that was courtesy of the Brewers radio network, as the NL Central once again one and done in the postseason, because that's what this division does. Since 2019, this division has not won a postseason series. The last team to do it was the Cardinals in 2019. That's it. Nothing else.
When was the last time the NL Central had a team that was dominant from like start to get to the World Series?
Yeah.
2016. And that was a one and done.
It's been nearly a decade since the NL Central was like truly a threat in the National League.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? Look how they did that. What did they do? They spent money in that offseason.
Well, and they tanked
and drafted and developed.
And they really pushed, and then they were all in with that core.
So you can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Well, maybe. That didn't end up working out well for them on the other side. But yeah, as you look now at the postseason, guys, and we've got 8 teams that remain. On the American League, it's going to be the Yankees versus the Royals in 3, and Tigers versus the Guardians. On the National League side, it's just, this is as good as Major League Baseball could have asked for. Dodgers versus Padres is going to be amazing. And Mets versus Phillies has all of the storylines you could ask for. Mets feel like the team of destiny, kind of similar to how they did in 2015. The Phillies, this is the year, man. This has got to come together eventually for them. Dodgers have been hemorrhaging pitching, but they do have 2 guys that are healthy. They've got Yamamoto game 1, Jack Flaherty, their big deadline acquisition game 2. Padres, this is what they were built for. We'll see what happens with Musgrove. That's a huge question for them on the pitching side of things. The National League's where all the best teams lie, right? Like, I would say if you were to re-rank the teams that are remaining in postseason contention, I would have like 3 of the top 4 teams that remain in the National League. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would have 3 before I would get to an American League team. And then I guess the real question is, would you have the Royals or the Mets?
I
think I would have the Royals. If you're going off of entertainment, I think I would go the Royals over the Mets.
I think I would have neither. Like, I would probably go, right now, best teams that remain for me.
Padres.
Let's say Musgrove's out, because it doesn't sound great on him. I would go Phillies 1, Padres/Dodgers 2-3, and then I would go Yankees 4, Mets probably 5. Right
I would go. I understand that Musgrove injury, but I think that offense is just rolling right now. I would go Padres 1. I'd go Phillies 2, Dodgers 3, Yankees, and then I actually would go the Royals. I don't think it's going to last, But if you're asking me pure entertainment and excitement value, they've got it. You've got Cole Reagans, you've got Bobby Witt Jr., you've got the grizzled vet in Salvador Perez. Like, you've got it all. Plus my paisan Pascatino, like that. I love that man. But like I would have them above the Mets, and it's wild that the other two teams in the American League are at the bottom of all of this conversation.
Yeah, I think that order's about right. I think that's about how I would have it. To me, it just comes down to who has the pitching to do this. I'm not looking at the offenses. That's why I would still have the Padres high up there. They've got an incredible bullpen. And even though they lose Musgrove, they've still got Darvish, they've still got Cease, and we saw what King did in Game 1 for them. So they've still got the starting pitching to help them out. It's why the Royals would be higher up on that list than the Mets for me. I mean, they got Reagans, they got Lugo, who wasn't impressive in his first game, but I still trust him. Michael Walker, who's going to be able to give them 5 solid innings, and it just comes down to can their bullpen get them through the rest. And, I mean, I love that, what's his name, Erkidge or whatever. Ersic, thank you. I couldn't remember his name. I know it's spelled kind of weird. He's been awesome ever since they acquired him. So they would be higher up on that list. But for me, yeah, it's definitely going to be Padres 1. I would go Phillies 2. I think they've got a better bullpen than the Dodgers, and Dodgers 3.
Yeah, it's the National League is where the best teams remain.
Sorry, somebody sent the quote from Bob Uecker in Cleveland and said this should have been his quote, or this should have been his line on the home run call. Just a reminder, fans, coming up is our Die Hard night here at the stadium. Free admission to anyone who's actually alive the last time the Brewers won a pennant. That's great, 314. This is why I hate BK for bringing up Bob Uecker's sad moments.
I mean, listen, he'll be fine.
Okay. Will he?
I hope so.
God, that's going to be awkward.
For him, it's not the best team he's seen in Milwaukee. That'd be probably that 2011 team.
Yeah.
And they didn't do it.
Yeah, this team was not supposed.
No, this team was never supposed to be there.
What they did was a success this year.
What we talk about with the NL Central, like they haven't won a playoff game in 5 years. Are we what surprise? Think of the teams that got to the playoffs from the NL Central.
Cardinals
All of them
in 22
had holes.
were the team that should have done it.
I don't know if they had the pitching, though. That's where, their bullpen wasn't very deep.
I think that was a better pitching staff than we give them credit for. I mean, the next year, Jordan Montgomery was the number 2 starter for the team that won the World Series.
Fine. I don't know if
and Michaelis at the time.
And then he got run over by a semi-truck.
Pretty good at the time. He was fine.
I don't know if they had the bullpen, though. Like, Helsley was the only guy in that pen.
You didn't have a 3-headed monster, but your starting pitching would at least keep it competitive.
And bullpens are, fluky. Texas didn't have a good bullpen last year going into the postseason, and then suddenly they had the most lockdown bullpen in Major League Baseball for a month.
Yeah.
So I thought that 22 team was really good, and then they, as we talked about earlier, Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt didn't come through in the spots where they needed them to, and, Ryan Helsley sprained his thumb 3 days before the postseason. We know what happened.
Way to go, Ollie.
Coming up next.
Hold on, we're blaming him for that one?
We blame Ollie for everything, apparently.
Oh, way to go, Ollie.
Mizzou is entering a prove-it week. What do they have in store for them down in Texas? We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
More Blues talk, more often. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
It's a prove-it week for the Missouri Tigers with Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, the Tigers are a 2.5-point road underdog in this game against Texas A&M. Let's start here. If you just told me Mizzou is playing Texas A&M neutral field, who's better? I would say Missouri. I think Mizzou is a much better team than Texas A&M. I think they have the advantage at defense. I think they have an advantage on the offensive side of the ball at quarterback and at wide receiver. I think they are the better team playing in this game. I also think playing at Kyle Field brings some difficulties.
Says who?
Says basically everybody that plays there.
I've heard practice at Ferrario Field is louder.
Yeah, well, says who?
Brady Cook.
Missouri, early on in the Eli Drinkwitz tenure, really struggled on the road. It was something that they had a lot of difficulties in. And honestly, as recently as last year, you go to their first road game at Vanderbilt, they played okay there. But then the next one at Kentucky, do you guys remember how long it took for them to get on track in that game? If not for that fake punt that ended up being that huge play to Marquise Johnson, I don't think they win that game. They were down early, get that fake punt, boom, that gets them back into it, and then they run away with it. But they struggled early on in that one. They lose the game on the road at Georgia last year. This is not a team that has had a ton of success under Eli Drinkwitz on the road. This is a huge test, man. I think nationally, and I know Missouri fans don't like hearing this, and I'm with you guys. I am a Missouri fan, and I agree with you. I think Missouri is a really good team. But nationally, people view this team as a fraud right now. I think a lot of people nationally will look at the record that they have and the ranking that is next to their name being in the top 10 and say, that's not a legitimate top 10 team. You beat Boston College by 6 at home. It took double overtime for you to beat Vanderbilt and got a little lucky there that it ended when it did. This is not a legitimate top 10 team. They're going to lose this week in their first real test of the season on the road at Texas A&M. So prove it. Prove that you are a legit top 10 team. Top 10 teams go into this kind of a game and win. That's what they do. It's time to see it from this team, man. This is their opportunity. You're coming off of a bye. You should be mostly healthy. Marquise Johnson is hurt, but you're coming off of a bye. Self-scout. Let's see what the big plays look like against this defense. They have their backup quarterback in this game. Now, he does present some difficulties. He's really good with his legs. You go down there and beat Texas A&M if you're as good as everybody thinks that this Missouri team should be.
Yeah, and I agree. I believe the people that look at Mizzou as frauds is because of their offense. Because coming into this season, this offense was supposed to be high-flying. It was supposed to be very exciting. You were supposed to be talking about Luther Burden and Brady Cook as one of the most dynamic 1-2 punches in college football. And you haven't seen it yet. Defense has been the story for a lot of these games more so than the offense. So a win proves a win backs Mizzou a little bit more. I think this is one of those games your offense has to go out there and show up. It has to come up with some big plays. You have to showcase that moment where it's like, there's the Brady Cook and Luther Burden we were looking for. Because if you have somewhat of a similar game like Vanderbilt, I still think people are going to look at this. I know it would still be a victory over a ranked opponent, but I look at it as some analysts would say, yeah, but they still don't feel like a top 10 team.
I think it's a prove-it game, but I think it's more just prove it by go out and win. I think when you go on the road in a top 25 environment, if your offense doesn't end up looking as clean and as crisp as like it should have against Vandy,
survive
then there's
and
a different
advance.
Conversation. Yeah, I think it's survive and advance now that you're going into a top 25 environment. I think for the Missouri Tigers, not only is it just a prove-it game for them, it's also a game that just allows them to play kind of free and easier the rest of the way, right? If you're able to go on the road and win at Texas A&M, really one of the 3 games that we've kind of highlighted on their season, A&M, Oklahoma at home, and then at Alabama later on, you lose this game, you suddenly have a lot less wiggle room. You no longer have a mulligan in your back pocket. And if you're the Missouri Tigers, I agree with you, BK. I think they're the better football team. They should win this football game. And if it was on a neutral site, they probably would be the 3-point favorite in my mind. So to me, it's not just, it's a prove-it game. If you've got to go out there, you've got to take care of business, you've got to win. But it also just allows for you to play a little free and easier the rest of the stretch until you get to that Alabama game. You lose at Texas A&M, you have to win that Alabama game. And Alabama looks like arguably one of the best teams in the country. I don't want to use my mulligan right now if I'm the Missouri Tigers.
This game reminds me a lot of that Kentucky matchup last year, man. A lot. Because at the time, Missouri had already had the big win at home against Kansas State. And you just were coming off of that loss against LSU, which was devastating. But you leave it and you're like, man, I mean, Jaden Daniels, what the hell were we supposed to do against that guy? He single-handedly beat him. He was one of the best players in the country at that point in time and ended up being the best player in the country last season, winning the Heisman. So you're like, okay, this is a big bounce-back performance opportunity for Missouri. And it's an opportunity for them to prove that they're more what they showed prior to that LSU game than what we saw in that specific game. And then they start out the game and they're down 14-0 early on. And it's like, oh my God, are they going to lose to Kentucky on the road? Is that really what's going to happen here? They get the fake punt, ends up being a touchdown for them. They're down 14-7, and they just basically never look back from there. They run away from Kentucky the rest of the game. Do that. Do that. Don't start out down 14-0, but do the thing where you win 38-21 and everybody can look at you and say, all right, I feel pretty good about this team right now. Because then, to T-Bone's point, I felt like from there, the weight had been lifted from this team. You got the loss out of the way against LSU. You had the close scare on the road out of the way against Kentucky. And then the team just played a little bit more freely. They beat the hell out of South Carolina the next week. They gave their best shot against Georgia. And they came up short, but nobody looked at that game against Georgia and said to themselves, man, Missouri didn't put up a hell of an effort. They were really close in that one.
That's the Alabama game from this year because that was on the road.
Absolutely. And then you beat the heck out of Tennessee. You had a close call, but find a way to win against Florida and finish out the season 10-2 with that win against Arkansas. I felt like they played more freely the rest of the way. This is the game that allows for that. Go hit a couple of big plays. Get that monkey off your back, Brady Cook. You said the thing this week that you weren't supposed to say. Go hit a couple of big plays and then cup the hand to the ear. Say you can't hear.
Do that in the fourth quarter, though, when there's like 5 seconds left. Don't do that in the first quarter.
It's like a lock to win the football game, not like the first drive.
Don't do that on the first drive, and then it get flagged for offsides. You kick a field goal, and you lose because that's not going to look good.
No,
you guys think they do it?
That's
do you guys
true.
think they win this weekend? Because none of us took Missouri or Texas A&M in the pick'em this week. I thought about it. I thought about doing the Missouri side. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. It's too close of a game for me to call one way or the other. But how do you feel about this one?
I think they get it done because I'm like you guys. I think Missouri's a better team than Texas A&M, and I also believe that Missouri understands what's at stake here. They've found ways to pull out victories in games where they haven't looked their best. At some point, you do have to open up the bag of tricks that you haven't unveiled yet, and this seems like that game that you're going to have to do that. So I think they pull it off. I think it'll be closer than what we're making it out to be. I don't think it's a 2-touchdown victory by Mizzou, but I do think they win.
Yeah, I think they win by like 7 or 10. I think having that bye week really helped them.
I agree.
Because now you go off of the close game to Vanderbilt. Drinkwitz isn't going to be celebrating during the bye week and having all these great practices. He's going to drill those guys. You guys survived. That's what it was against Vanderbilt. You play like that against A&M, you're going to lose. And I think that's going to be drilled into this team. I think they're going to show up, and I think they're going to play pretty well.
Man, I think it's going to be really close. I think Missouri wins this one by like 6. And I think it's a frustrating game to watch as a fan because Texas A&M does have a good defense and they have a quarterback that's going to make a few plays. And when you have those things that are a combo, there's some similarities to what you saw against Vanderbilt, honestly, in terms of how the matchup could play out. I think it could be kind of similar to that. He's going to make a couple of plays that make you want to pull your hair out and certainly will make Missouri's defensive coordinator, Corey Batoon, pull his hair out. I think Brady Cook's going to have to win this one with his arm. I think you're going to have a couple of big plays between he and Luther Burden or he and Theo Weiss, and that's the way that you ultimately win it. I think they will. I think they go on the road, get a huge win this weekend, and then next week go back on the road and kick the crap out of Massachusetts, a game that should have never been scheduled.
I'm worried about
that one. I've heard that's a pretty quiet environment, too.
I hope Brady Cook doesn't taunt the home crowd.
Yeah. I've heard that not much goes on in UMass
tickets are as low as $18. I hope he's not taunting them to show up.
We should go up there. We should go to Amherst together.
I don't want to go to
do a show on the road.
Pass.
No. It's great this time of the year. I went up there a few years ago, remember?
You should go. You should go.
Yeah.
Pass. I would love to go to UMass. You guys don't want to go?
I'll go for hockey season.
It'll be me and my 5,000 closest friends watching Missouri versus
You almost
UMass
said
together.
fans. There's that ego again where he thinks he's got 5,000 fans.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, NFL Weekend
right.
Look Ahead coming up next.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues ended their home portion of the preseason last night on a high note as they took down the Dallas Stars in overtime thanks to a game-winning goal by Jordan Kyrou by a final score of 4-3. Blues have 2 wins now on the preseason, 2-4 in their first 6 games. Their last preseason game will be tomorrow in Milwaukee as they face off with the Chicago Blackhawks to end the preseason before they get going in the regular season on Tuesday in Seattle. And some Cardinals news today. Earlier today, they announced that they are parting ways with their hitting coach, Turner Ward. And tonight on 101 ESPN, you can hear some college football. It'll be Syracuse trying to knock off number 25 UNLV, who is 4-0 on the season so far. Pregame for that will start at 7:30. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, it's time for our NFL weekend look ahead here on BK and Ferrario. We're going to go over the matchup we're most looking forward to, the upset that we expect to see, the overreaction Monday game. Get into all of that between now and the end of the segment. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We got Grant Francis back in the studio for us today. Alex, when you look at, and you're not looking at your fantasy team.
No, I'm trying to make a trade because you took 24 hours to finally respond to it.
The matchup that
like
you're
Heim
most...
Bloom.
Yeah, I'm effectively Heim Bloom.
It's like you made me the trade offer.
I made you a trade offer that you rejected. Then you sent me a counter, and I didn't like the counter. It just took a little bit of time.
Well, they rejected immediately. I got a lot of irons in the fire right now.
Alex, the matchup you're most looking forward to on Sunday in the NFL is what?
Ravens-Bengals. Bills and Texans would probably be a tie for first for me, but I think Ravens-Bengals mostly because that's the division rivalry. I think as much as I don't believe in either of those teams because they both have pretty significant flaws, one of those two teams are going to be the king of that division by the end of the season. I think you're going to get a good preview of it.
Yeah, I would go Bills-Texans is the one for me. Now, I would go with the Jets and Vikings game. I don't want to get up that early. Saturdays are when T-Bone...
9 a.m.
Oh, T-Bone gets his beauty sleep. I won't be up till 11, so don't even call me.
Jesus, man.
Bills-Texans is the one for me. I think you're going to start to see the kinks get worked out of this Houston offense a little bit. Now, look, they're without Joe Mixon, so that's going to throw a little bit of a wrench in things. I still believe they're a really good contender, or still a contender in the AFC. I know they've kind of scuffled. I think that's the best matchup, and we'll see how Josh Allen responds after they just got the crap kicked out of him by Baltimore.
I will go with the game that I both see as the matchup I'm most looking forward to and also a potential overreaction Monday game.
Patriots,
I think it applies to that. No, it's the game that you mentioned. Jets versus the Vikings. It's overseas. It's in London. It's the early game. Man, I really want to see what this Jets offense looks like because it has not looked right so far this year. They had that game against the 49ers and we all left that thinking, okay, they looked all right, especially at the beginning. 49ers are great. I'm sure they'll get this thing back on track against the Titans. It was okay. Looks a little better maybe against the Patriots, but the Patriots aren't very good. And then last week was an abomination. What they did against the Broncos was a complete and abject failure. Aaron Rodgers still hasn't thrown for 300 yards in a game since like 2021. It's been 3 years now. This is a tough defense to go up against, man. And if the Jets lose this game, coming up next, you've got the Bills, the Steelers on the road, and then in a few weeks, you've got the Texans. I don't know, man. If this is a real playoff team, this is a game that you got to win if you're the Jets. So this, to me, is going to be potentially the overreaction Monday game, and I love the games that you guys said, but if I'm going to take a third, it would also be the matchup I'm most looking forward to. Alex, what is your overreaction Monday game this weekend?
Oh, man. Probably...
And the reason why I think the Jets game could be an overreaction Monday game, dude, if the Vikings win, they'll be 5-0 on the year, and we're all going to have to be all in on them, and the Jets will then be in panic mode. 2-3.
I kind of wonder if overreaction Monday is going to be if the Commanders take down the Cleveland Browns, if the Commanders are the best team in that division.
That's a good one.
And I'm not denying it because I've said it a couple of times now. Jaden Daniels feels a lot like C.J. Stroud last season. That team feels a lot like it. And now you're talking about a victory over the Cardinals, a victory over the Bengals, and then a victory over the Browns. But that's also why I kind of feel like it's a little overreaction-y if you win that, because sure, you won 3 in a row. I think the Bengals have flaws. Cardinals I thought were great, but they've obviously got flaws, and nobody's investing anything into the Browns. We'll talk once we get to the Ravens the next week, but I think that could be an overreaction game.
Yeah, I think Cardinals 49ers has a potential for that. I think the game, though, for me that will drive this is going to be the Sunday night game. When you've got the Cowboys at the Steelers. Steelers win that, they're going to be 4-1. People are going to be all in on look at that defense, look at Justin Fields. Then they'll panic about the Cowboys will drop below 500. If the Cowboys win, though, I think what you'll see is a lot of the reaction will be, oh, are the Cowboys back? Did they finally get things going? Look at the defense that they just beat, and on the road in Pittsburgh, a tough place to play where they invented a terrible towel. Like, I could see where that is the game that has all the overreaction on Monday.
Cowboys, Brandon Cook is out for a while now.
Yeah.
They've got both defensive ends are out in this game. Lawrence is on IR. Parsons has the high ankle sprain. It's a tough spot for them. They're a 2.5-point road underdog for a reason in that one, man. Yeah, that's a really good one, T-Bone. The one other that I would throw into this, if the Texans do, as I'm expecting, lose on Sunday at home against the Bills, you will have lost then against the 2 teams that are real that you've gone up against. And if they lose big in this game, we're all going to look at them and be like, oh, that's this year's Dolphins. You can beat the teams that are below you, but once you go up against a legitimate threat, you're going to get beat. And we'll all have to be like, okay, did we crown them a little bit early? Because at that point, you beat Indy by 2. That was a lucky one. You beat the Bears by a touchdown. And last week, you had to hold on for dear life against the Jaguars. Suddenly, we'll all be looking a little sideways at the Houston Texans, wondering, maybe not quite as good as we thought they were. All right, next thing up here. Upset pick of the week. We typically try to go with somebody that is an upset of at least 3 points. 3 points or more.
Not a lot.
Not a lot of choices.
No.
Yeah.
You got like 2 of them.
The NFL is essentially this year like, hey, good luck finding the big spreads because they don't really exist in the league this year. But the ones that are big typically end up being upsets this season. Alex, who do you have as your upset pick of the week this week?
I'll lean into my 1-point play. I say the Raiders take down the Broncos. I know the Broncos' defense has been good, and I know the Raiders' offense is up in flames now, especially with Devontae Adams just tweeting out pictures of poets. I just think that's a battle of average teams, and I like the Raiders a little bit more. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I really don't think Bo Nix is the guy for them, but I'm going to just stick with my 3-point or my 1-point play there and say the Raiders pull that one off.
There's not a lot of great options here. I think the one for me, though, that I could see happening, and it's because they kept it close last week and they're 1-1 with the new quarterback change. It's the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, going against the Chicago Bears. That's a good defense, but as we've seen, Bryce Young was the problem. We knew that was the case, but we've now seen that, hey, it was a problem. I mean, they put up 24 points and lost by 10 to the Bengals, and they were in that football game. So I could see where you get the Chicago Bears. I don't know if I trust Caleb Williams to just, like, suddenly say, oh, they're going against a bad team. Of course he'll break out. He's still a rookie. You're still going to be able to take advantage of the rookie. Their offensive line can't block at all. I can see the Carolina Panthers beating the Chicago Bears.
I'm going with my pick of the week. It's the Browns. It's a disgusting game. A horrible team. They're on the road. They're a 3.5-point underdog at the Commanders.
If they win that game, it's just going to be an ugly bloodbath.
Yeah, don't watch. But I do wonder, hey, Jaden Daniels, you've been amazing. I love Jaden Daniels as much as anybody. I thought there was a real case he should have been the number 1 overall pick this year. But this is a really tough matchup. That defense is excellent. They're going to show you stuff that's super weird. They're going to blitz all day long. I think it'll make things a little bit more uncomfortable for the Commanders' offense. I don't think they're going to have the same amount of success this week. I could see the Browns coming out with a victory against the Commanders. And it's not going to tell you that the Commanders are a bad team or anything like that, but they've had some really high highs over the last couple of weeks. I think they come back down to earth a bit this week and then follow it up with another loss next week at the Ravens. All right, last thing here. The biggest headline to come out of this weekend, Alex, will be what?
I suck at this because I don't create the best
You don't even worry about like
headlines.
The biggest story that comes out of this week is what?
Buffalo is the superior team in the AFC. Buffalo boosts everyone out of the AFC. That one sucked. I don't do this very well. I miss my guy Bradford. They're going to beat the Texans.
You need to text Bradford.
I do.
What your headline is.
You know Bradford
and
will
have
love
him
it.
come up with something.
Bradford. I'm going to start doing that
it's
from
like
now on.
Chat GPT. You could just send it.
Bradford's my chat. You know what I'm going to do on our picks moving forward? I'm going to send Bradford my pick and say, give me a headline for each one of them. That's next week coming your way. But it's going to be Buffalo being the superior team in the AFC. You take down the Texans, and I know I'm a Texans guy. That's going to set people off the train of the Houston Texans. I don't think Baltimore's very good, even though I've picked them in this week. I don't think the Bengals are very good. The Chiefs are a little banged up right now. Buffalo's the superior team in the AFC when they take down the Houston Texans.
Vikings pillage London. Remain 5-0 as the only undefeated team
Thanks, man.
in the NFC.
3-0, am I right?
I think they'll win that game. I would never take that in our pick'em challenge because it worries me. But I think you'll see Vikings pillage Vikings pillage London. That's hard to say, man. And they will be 5-0, and they will be the story coming out of the NFC.
Buffalo build for the top spot in the AFC. Thanks, text line.
There you go. That's pretty good. I like that.
Was that from Bradford?
That was Bradford, wasn't it? Bradford, are you the 314?
My last one here. Patriots mock McDaniel. McDaniels is out as Dolphins head coach.
Wow.
Not yet. He won't be fired after this weekend.
What a headline. Oh, but no, he's not getting fired.
I think it's coming. We talked about this going into the season. How long does he have here before people start saying, is this all just empty calories? Are we just all eating Skittles, getting excited about it and enjoying it, and then you leave and you have zero nutritional value that came from any of it?
Watching them is like eating Skittles. It makes my stomach hurt.
It's tough, man. I understand that last week you had Huntley in there. Prior to that, it was Thompson. Tua's not out for another few weeks.
Who do you hire?
I don't know, but this is clearly not working. I think Mike McDaniel is a good head coach. I used to grade him on a curve, though, because I said, okay, well, he's got Tua in there who's fine, but not a great quarterback. I'm grading him on a curve because of that. Once you sign Tua to a $50 million per year deal, I'm not grading you on a curve anymore. You signed off on that. They listen to your decision-making in that organization. That's your guy. Well, you signed up for this, and this is the results. And right now, you are a team that cannot do anything offensively, has been terrible defensively. I think they're losing this week on the road at New England. And I think they will go into their bye week 1-4, and it's not getting better. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And I'll be curious to see if we start hearing more and more buzz about Tyreek Hill potentially asking out. They can't trade him. They have no way to move on for that money, but I could see it getting a little ugly there behind the scenes.
Tyreek back to the Chiefs?
No, not happening. Coming up next,
no money.
We'll let the BK and Ferrario rewind as we close things out on the week here on 101 ESPN.
run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you can go to find it. It is all presented by
Tire and Auto Centers.
Forgot to turn my mic on there.
Noob.
We are all pros here. We've
Like
been
how PK
broadcasting
got
live
angry.
at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center, where the Blues hosted their optional skate earlier today. By the way, we had a little birdie, Alex, that told us...
Was it a raven?
No. That Matthew Joseph and Zach Bolduc were the last guys on the ice today.
P.O. Joseph.
P.O. Joseph.
Yeah.
We got
The other Joseph.
P.O. Joseph and
Zach Bolduc.
Zach Bolduc were the last ones on the ice today. You love seeing that. So just passing that along. A little bit of kudos to those two guys.
Those
All
birdies.
Right. Speaking of the Blues. Saw everything you needed to see last night from Kapanen. I think as of today, Alex, I would expect he's going to be on your opening night roster. Probably going to be in the lineup. Probably going to be on the third line. The lineup in general played pretty well last night for the most part. I'm not willing to go any further than that. My reaction to last night is just as simple as that's it. He's earned an opportunity to be in the lineup on opening night. And then when Brandon Saad gets back, if he is still playing as well as he did last night, maybe he does stay in. And maybe you drop down Texier and you end up going with one of the fourth line guys who's out of the lineup. But my current belief, Kapanen probably gets the first few games. Saad ends up getting back into the lineup, and he'll take that spot.
Yeah, I think there's still 3 internal competitions taking place. We spent all this time talking Kapanen. Dylan Holloway looked awesome last night playing with Robert Thomas and Jake Neighbors. He directly led to that Philip Broberg goal by him going to the front of the net to allow Thomas to create some scoring space on the ice. But you've got Holloway on the top line. You've got Texier playing with Buchnevich and Kyrou, and then you got Kapanen playing on that line. It comes down to consistency because when Brandon Saad comes back, he's going to have open range of wherever they deem best for him. If chemistry is built between Holloway, Thomas, and Neighbors, and Kapanen is building chemistry with Shen and Joseph, Saad could just float right there into where Texier is playing. And then if somebody struggles, let's say Saad doesn't play on this road trip, if somebody struggles, if somebody's consistency dips from Tuesday to Thursday night, they come out of the lineup and Bolduc goes in. It's a little bit of a trial, but once Saad is back and once Sundqvist's back, that's when those decisions really need to get made. And if you're Bolduc, if you get one shot, sound like Hamilton right now, if you get one shot, you can't let it go by. Yeah. Because if you don't prove yourself the way that Kapanen did in 3 preseason games, you'll be headed to the AHL. Because the one thing Bolduc has going against him is he's exempt from waivers. Everyone else has to go through waivers. So you have to outplay that on top of the guys you're competing with.
So that's the Blue side of things. On the Cardinal side of things, they did make some news today. They have decided to move on from their hitting coach, and they're going to have to fill that position. We don't know who exactly. It sounds like the rest of the staff, according to Katie Wu, will be back. Brandon Allen, the assistant hitting coach, is expected back with the team, but Turner Ward has been let go, and they will be hiring for that position. I think this is a move they had to make. Is not a shot against Turner Ward. I think he's probably pretty decent at his job, but took too long for guys to get back on track. They had the valleys were way too deep this year, and it's time to find out who the next guy is. I will be curious, as I mentioned earlier today, if the next guy has any ties to the Rays organization. Does Chaim Bloom have any insight, any connections across Major League Baseball that will lead to the next hire? That's something I'll be paying attention to there. On the college football side of things, big weekend for the Missouri Tigers. Alex, do you have Mizzou going down to College Station and beating a top 25 opponent in Texas A&M this weekend?
I do. I think it's somewhere between a 2 or 3 point win, but I have them beating Texas A&M.
I do too. I think they end up winning by a touchdown, 10 points. It's going to be close, but I think they'll take care of business. I think they're a better football team.
And T-Bone, in 10 seconds, what should we be watching for in City SC, the final game of the season tomorrow?
I would just watch it for fun, folks. I don't think there's anything else to learn.
T-Bone forgot that there was a City SC match tomorrow.
Big game for the
100% odds, I thought it was over.
Big game for the coach. We'll see if he's able to retain his status as the head coach of City, or if it ends up being somebody else that they hire from the outside. I think Louisville's coach is kind of the other guy that's getting buzzed there.
That is true.
Louisville?
Yeah. They got
it's like an AHL coach getting an opportunity in the NHL, that kind of a thing.
Oh,
basically.
okay.
I would give the job to Hackworth, by the way. I think he's done a pretty good job.
I think some of the transfers they've had seem to be.
And I think defensively they're bad, and that's not on him. That's on Luke's.
All right. With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. They will have the show for you guys on Monday. I will be on with the morning show on Monday once again, so please stay tuned for that. Monday morning, 7 a.m.
11 a.m.
We'll be taking care of you guys on Monday. Grant Francis did a fantastic job for us working back in the studio today. If you guys missed anything, don't forget, check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com, the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
We'll talk to you guys Monday. Have a fantastic week in the Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.